Welcome to the Great Lakes Truck Series on the Flatout Racing Network. Tonight is the FRN 200 from the virtual Daytona International Speedway. I'm Seth Cole alongside Kyle Lawrence in the booth. We're getting set to kick off another great season of Great Lakes Truck Series action on FRN. But before we do that, Kyle, we got to set the starting lineup for tonight's event.
Yeah, the season opener here at Daytona International will be 80 laps for 200 miles here to start off the Great Lakes Truck Series presented by Patti Engineering. It should be a lot of fun. It's going to start off with 2 heat races. 8 laps. I'm reading 8 laps each, and I'm also reading 5 laps each. I'm not exactly sure which one it is. I think it's 8 laps. And the top 2 are going to lock themselves into qualifying, which will be done first. So we're going to lock up that front row, and then the rest of the starting lineup will be decided by those short but exciting heat races, Seth.
It's going to be a blast to see what these drivers are able to do at the high banks of Daytona. Clean slate for all these drivers. What happened in past seasons doesn't matter. You're starting the path towards a championship here in Season 5. It's going to be interesting to see here what the strategy is going to be as well. Usually we see in super speedway races, drivers will go to the front, stay at the front. Other drivers, they elect the safe strategy of riding at the back, but you know, by the time we get to around 20 to go, especially when we start getting to that 10 to go range, everybody's going to be fighting and clawing for every position possible.
That's right, Seth. Me personally, my strategy always at Daytona is just take it easy up until those last few laps and try to make that move to the front. And then we're going to see some guys that are going to try to keep up front all day long here in the FRN 200 here on FRN, the Flatout Racing Network. It is going to be a good way to start out the season of Great Lakes action here on Tuesday night.
It'll be interesting to see how drivers approach the rules here this evening. Of course, super speedway rules, that double yellow line out of bounds, so drivers going to have to be mindful of that. I don't expect that we're going to be seeing these drivers shy of taking it not only double wide, but maybe even 3 wide and 4 wide if the opportunity arises. And I think maybe the one thing we got to look at as well is the 3 green-white checkers that are available at the end of this race. I don't know, super speedway racing, we may need all of them here tonight.
Yeah, the super speedway racing definitely gets intense, especially here in the Great Lakes Series. We saw it just last week in the All-Star event, a couple of crazy heat races, and then a pretty calm main event. In those last couple of laps, everything began to hit the fan, and then coming off the last corner, coming into the trial, it was 4 wide. 4 wide. A couple of 25-11 cars getting into it a little bit. Christopher Heller spins across the line, and DJ Stagner edges into the line to get the all-star win. So I'm expecting a lot more excitement here today because this race here today, Seth, is for points.
Absolutely. We're seeing some drivers heading out onto the racetrack here to try and set a qualifying lap that would put them on the front row, lock them into the show. Interesting, we had a couple of drivers that actually had to take part. Only 20 drivers were locked into the 500 field. The remaining, I believe, was 25 drivers had to take part in a separate qualifying session to even have a guaranteed spot in tonight's race. And maybe they've got a little bit of an added advantage knowing just how to approach this racetrack here tonight for a good qualifying lap. We'll have to wait and see.
We're going to see this front row locked up here in a few minutes here for the FRN 200, the first event of this season, the Great Lakes Series. But coming off a great year in 2021 for Great Lakes action, fresh off a Truck Series season where Ashton Lawson was able to pull an upset in the Championship 4 and beat out Jake Miller, Ross Brockman, and Matthew Durr at Atlanta. Able to snag that second championship and get that first win in a non-ARCA car in Great Lakes competition. It was a great thing to see and very exciting way to end the season last season. But this season, I expect to even be more competitive. A lot of drivers are really ganging up. We see a lot of teams becoming a lot stronger this season. Like Dark Horse Motorsports looked very strong last week in the All-Star race.
It's interesting, too, when you look back at the past 4 Daytona season openers, 4 races, 4 different drivers have gone to victory lane. So what do you think, Kyle? Do we go a 5 for 5 here this season, or did we maybe see our first repeat Daytona winner? Because we got a couple of the former winners in the field here tonight.
I'm thinking we're going to see Mr. Pink, Eric Kepf, find himself in victory lane here tonight. He is just such a phenomenal super speedway racer, and he's just so smart. He's one of the smartest people and drivers I've ever been around or raced with. And I can definitely see him getting the job done here today. And here he is making his qualifying run. Another driver I would like to mention is last year's winner, Michael Sensi, is unfortunately not in the field tonight. So we won't see a repeat winner from last year at least, but we can see Kep definitely getting into victory lane. We know he can get it done at the super speedways. He's done it before.
See him utilizing the shorter way there through the trioval below the double yellow line. That is legal in qualifying, but right now has him sitting fourth on the board. Kef, a former winner of this event back in season 3, as right now Mike Tellier, Matthew Rodriguez, you're looking at the 57 right now, they sit top of the board. And to the point I made earlier, these are two drivers that had to, first off, qualify their way into this field and may have found just a little bit of something extra here as opposed to those other drivers who were already locked in.
Here you see Matthew Rodriguez finishing up that lap. I loved that picture he had of the Cookie Monster. He's going to be out there getting those cookies. Good old Emrod here at Daytona.
37 truck putting down a solid lap there. Right now sharing the front row with Mike Tellier. He knocked Matthew Rodriguez off the front row. So right now, well, as soon as I say that, now he gets displaced by Henry in the 12 machine.
Yeah, Zach Henry looked very strong in the second half of 2021 in Great Lakes action. He's one of those dark horse drivers I have for this year. Not on the dark horse team, but a dark horse driver as an underdog. Zach Henry can do a lot of things. He's a very, very good driver and competitive and consistent. And he's looking to get himself on the front row right now in the second spot. Mike Teller currently on the pole. Elliot Henderson right now in that third spot, the first guy out.
Seen a couple more drivers make their way up into the top 10. And of course, as well, even if you don't start in the front row for this race, you want to have yourself at least a decent qualifying attempt, because that means you're going to be starting up close to the front of the field in your upcoming heat race or the duels here tonight.
Me personally, I don't even know if I would put down a qualifying run. I would kind of want to keep myself in the back and I just want to stay in the back. I want to keep it safe. I don't want to get myself into any trouble. I just want to keep it safe. And I don't even want people to know I'm here until those last couple of laps and be like, where'd he come from?
Well, we will be seeing maybe some preliminary strategy for the upcoming FRN 200 in the upcoming heat races. See if drivers that may have qualified up at the front might try and stay up front maybe a lap or two and then drop to the back to subsequently start at the rear of the field for the upcoming main event. On the flip side, there may be some that aren't so happy with their qualifying attempt, and they might try and fight their way up to the front of the field. Of course, all the drivers that laid down qualifying laps here, they're locked into the upcoming race. So does that kind of give these guys a little bit of, I wouldn't exactly say freedom, but it gives them maybe not as much pressure to make sure that they bring the truck home in one piece here in this heat race?
Oh, definitely, Seth. Like I was mentioning before, there's not so much pressure now in this event. Everybody that's here, they're not, in most cases in heat races, you're racing in those heat races to get into the main event. This is purely just to set up the starting lineup. So that takes a lot of that pressure off. And we can see some drivers just maybe practice their moves. This would be a good time to maybe practice their moves if they don't really care where they start. If they're up there near the front, maybe try to pull a last lap sort of move to practice for later.
Well, the sun's starting to set here in Daytona Beach, Florida. We will be completely bathed in darkness, and the lights will be coming on here when these drivers prepare for the start of tonight's FRN 200, as we've got our first heat drivers on pit road set on the grid behind the iRacing Pace truck. Of course, the drivers that qualified, I believe, in the even numbers would be the ones, the odd numbers would be the ones taking part here in this first heat race. And for some, looking to maintain their starting position, some of them looking to improve their starting position. It's going to be really interesting to see as well. We talked about the fact that drivers that had to qualify their way into the main show how it gave them maybe a little bit of an upper edge on how to approach qualifying here for starting on the pole or the outside the front row. You got to wonder if maybe here in these heat races, these drivers going to be able to go to school, get used to the racing style, the super speedway racing style of the drivers around them, and might be able to form some alliances even here and now that they'd apply later on.
Yeah, this would be a great point, Seth, to figure that out. Figure out who's fast. Figure out who's a good pusher. Figure out who can hold a straight line the best. Who do you work with the best? Who do you have that chemistry with? This is a good time to figure that out. And I would like to note, right there before qualifying had finished, Justin Mons did put himself onto the pole. A driver I do have high expectations for this season to go out there and win a couple of races. A very strong driver, but probably one of the most unluckiest drivers I've ever seen on iRacing. Hopefully he can maybe put it together tonight and snag a victory. But starting on the pole for this first heat is Zach Henry, who got knocked off that front row at the last moment. Debuting for 25-11, I would like to note.
Henry going to be starting on the front row with Brittle. As these drivers right now, you can see that there are going to be 8 laps of heat racing here. So what do you think? The heat race is going to be calm? Is it basically just going to be drivers laying back and learning what these trucks are capable of doing here tonight? Or do we see these drivers kind of press the aggressive button immediately on the get-go here and push their trucks to the limit to kind of see what these trucks are capable of doing when we eventually take the green flag for the upcoming 200?
Here comes the pace truck onto pit road right now, and we're going to take the green flag. Zachary Henry is going to lead him to the green flag here in heat number 1. And then as you were saying, Seth, I really see this being kind of like an Arnold Palmer, a half and half situation. I see half the field try stuff and really try to put down some crazy moves because it's a risk-free situation. And the other half just kind of waiting it out in the back, waiting for the heat race to end.
Double wide back to around the top 10. Now they're going to get themselves settled out about the mid-pack. They were 3 wide for a brief moment there. One thing I'm noticing, nobody at least up at the front going below the double yellow line to drop to the back. So it looks like all these guys, they want to keep that good starting track position for the upcoming race as we still remain 2 by 2. And look at this, neither lane really getting an advantage. They stay even here off of turn 4.
Yeah, the inside and the high side looking very even coming off of turns 3 and 4. But it looks like Zach Henry will lead lap number 1 of the first heat. But Hunter Brittle getting a good push from Mr. Pink, a.k.a. Eric Kep, on the high side.
Super Speedway Racing is one of the maybe the most unique type of racing in any type of racing series, in the fact that you need to have friends, you need to have allies, and you were talking about this, Kyle, in the fact of the way that you race here in these heats might be the deciding factor into how many friends you're going to have in the upcoming race. The big thing, you talked there about Kempf, if you're a good pusher, people are going to be willing to work with you because the pushers are able to get the momentum. The momentum is what helps the cars go, or in this case, the trucks go to the front and stay up at the front.
That's what you're seeing right now, that inside and high side just keeping together. Brittle versus Henry continues on to lap number 3 of heat number 1. Brittle has an advantage going into 1 and 2. That's the first time I've really seen the high side have that advantage going into the corner. Let's see what Brittle can do on the back stretch. If he's able to clear Henry, does he jump down in front of him?
It's going to be interesting to see as well what happens in the second heat. Of course, I'm certain that all the drivers coming up in that second qualifying race, they've got to have their eyes on this, taking in information, seeing how these trucks handle in the draft. We're now 3. Oh, a little bit of maybe gap whack there as one truck on that outside line went up into the air. The left front left the racing surface, and he's dropping like a rock. Very fortunate we didn't have a caution right there.
Yeah, it looked like Shane Neiswanger in the number 49, the runner-up in the Great Lakes Winter Series, got up into the wall right there. Might have been a little bit of contact in 3 and 4, and the 49 is now head to the back with some pretty bad right side damage.
The fact that happened in the midway portion of the field, really surprised that didn't kill the momentum of the outside line, and now going to take it 3 wide potentially for the race lead.
Brittle gets put into the middle. Eric Kepf is on the high side, and the high side is going to go way back because everybody's split decision. Here comes Madalinas all the way to the high side. The closer jumps all the way to the high side. Almost there goes Eric Kepf.
Oh!
Wrecking off the corner. A huge wreck.
In the worst place on the racetrack, too. We got a car up and over in the infield.
Oh, man. A very nasty accident. No cautions here in the heat races. They continue on. We have 6 drivers underneath the blanket here. We have Zach Henry, Hunter Brittle, Matt Daniels, Tyler McClellan, Nathan Nixon, and Hunter Madalinas.
That pretty much took away maybe 2/3, maybe more of the field. Right now, a 6-horse race at the front as less than 4 laps to go. Looking back there, 7th, 8th. I think they're too far back to be able to get the draft. So now I think if you're these guys up here in this lead group, yeah, you want to be able to win this qualifying race for sure. But at the same time, you know, if you look at the guys that are running 2nd through 5th, we already know that Henry's going to be starting up towards the front. We already know that we've got our pole sitter set. All these other guys, they're guaranteed qualifying positions inside the top 12. So I'm not sure I would force the issue right now.
There's no need to force the issue in a situation like this. This is basically a throwaway race. It's a practice race. It sets up the starting lineup. And these 6 drivers are going to maybe try some things now. Because 6 drivers, you can really kind of pick out who to work with right here and try to figure something out for those last few laps.
Be a little bit of experimentation going to go on here. You're right. As still 3 trucks on the top, 3 trucks on the bottom, neither lane being able to gain an advantage. And usually when we end up seeing one lane not be able to outdraft the other and the side-by-side battling continues lap after lap, that's usually when we start to see mistakes. As got a wounded truck coming off of pit road. And that's another thing too. All those drivers with no caution coming out that were involved in that wreck off of turn 4 and into the tri-oval, they're still going to try and putt-putt around the racetrack here and get the best position they can, because every position needs maybe a couple more spots higher in the running order for the qualifying results in the upcoming main event race.
1.5 laps to go here in heat number 1. Brittle and Henry still going back and forth. They've been doing this pretty much the whole heat. And here comes Matt Daniels on the inside of Brittle. Henry is clear of Brittle. Does he maybe jump to the high side? Let's see what happens here. He's not going to be able to. He's back at the quarter panel as we get the white flag for heat number 1.
I think he's going to stay committed on the bottom there with at a second car on the inside line there, the 5 of Matt Daniels top side. Let's see if Tyler McLennan forces the issue here, gets right to the back bumper of Hunter Brittle to try and push him down the back straightaway. It doesn't look like that third car of Matalanis, it doesn't look like he's close enough there to McLennan to be able to push that train. Instead, look at this, 3 wide up to the top. McLennan's going to go for it himself.
Tyler McClellan forces it to the high side, puts Brittle in the middle, and they're all going to fall back. This is going to give Matt Daniels an opportunity off 3 and 4 to maybe steal heat number 1. Does he make the move? He's right behind. Oh, Madalinas turns into the number 1, a big wreck, and the 1's flipping. And the number 12, Zach Henry, gets heat number 1.
Zach Henry was going to start on the pole position for tonight's FRN 200 regardless, but put another feather in his cap here this evening as he started on point for this heat race, wins the heat race. Matt Daniels going to improve a position up as he's going to finish in 2nd. Hunter Brittle will drop a position down as he finishes in 3rd. But how about that? The drivers that started 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, they finish in the podium here for this heat race. So you wouldn't necessarily think it at a track like Daytona, but when it's a short 8-lap heat race, track position apparently really does matter.
Track position really seems to matter here. Zachary Henry didn't do all that much either. He kind of just held his line pretty much the whole race and ended up winning, and now he's locked up that 3rd place position. The front row did not start in these heat races. Justin Mons and Mike Teller starting on your front row, and Henry now snags that 3rd starting spot. So great job by Zach Henry. He's a driver really to watch out for. I was mentioning it earlier. He had such a great second half of 2021 here in Great Lakes competition. Was able to snag a couple of victories and really proved to be one of the top drivers in the Great Lakes Series.
Now we're getting set for the second group of drivers to get out onto the racetrack. See who's going to be starting in which row on the outside line for the respective starting lineup here tonight. We already know that Elliott Henderson, who's going to be the subsequent pole sitter for this heat race, he will be on the outside of the front row. Henry won his heat race. We'll see if Henderson's going to be able to double down and make it 2 for 2. Matthew Rodriguez will be to his outside, but a thing that really stood out to me, especially after we had that big wreck, a lot of drivers that were scheduled to start up inside of the top 10 in the starting lineup, that heat race changing things up a bit. A lot of them now going to be starting outside of the top 20. So it always seems like at Daytona, when we have these heat races or these dual races, we have one race where it's absolutely chaotic, and then we have a heat race or a duel where it's calm and everybody minds their P's and Q's. I think we can safely say, at least right now, heat number 1 was the chaotic one. We'll have to see now if this duel number 2 is going to be the calm one.
Let's see what happens here in heat number 2. You mentioned it, Elliott Henderson, Mr. Bobby Carter, starting on the pole in that number 37 machine. Let's see what he can do. Zach Henry started on the pole in his heat, and now he's starting third in the race. Can Henderson lock up that fourth starting position in the number 37 machine by snagging a victory in heat number 2? Zach Henry made it look real easy. He just kind of held his line the whole race, and no one really competed for the win, except for Brittle on the outside, who was never able to get quite a good enough push to get in front of him.
Could be Henderson and Rodriguez, the front row. Daniel Nanny, who we saw make a late charge up into the top 10 during the pole day qualifying session. He's going to be rolling off from third. Cody Giles and Ross Brockman. That's the top 5 here. 20 drivers set to be able to put the rest of the FRN 200 starting lineup together. Again, much like we saw in heat number 1, 8 laps, no cautions going to be thrown during the course of those 8 circuits. And tell you what, folks, we've already seen some incredible racing here tonight. We haven't even gotten to the main event. No points on the line up to this point. We're basically just setting the field for the upcoming season opener and getting ready here for what's going to be the final qualifying event before we get ready to turn them loose. Henderson behind the iRacing Chevy Silverado off turn 4, heading for the tri-oval. Pace truck's about to turn him loose.
Here comes the pace truck down pit road once again here for heat number 2 this time. And the green flag waves for Elliott Henderson in the 37, who gets off to a good start. Nanny right in behind him. Matthew Rodriguez not quite as ready, but the 7 of Cody Giles right on his bumper.
Starting to see a couple drivers mid-pack jumping up to that outside line, so the numbers may be forming up in the second group. We'll see if that helps propel Matthew Rodriguez back up alongside of Henderson, as right now Rodriguez side by side with Nanny for the second position. There's the push down the back straightaway. That outside line always seems like it gets such good straightaway speed, whether it be on the back or the front straightaway, and Rodriguez almost halfway clear on Henderson into 3.
Cody Giles was probably the best pusher I saw at the All-Star race, and he gave a fantastic push to Matthew Rodriguez down that whole backstretch, and he's still pushing him into the tri-oval. Rodriguez gets a little loose into the tri-oval, and it looked like he led lap number 1. A great push from that number 7. He really knows how to work that car. A new member to the newly formed Dark Horse Motorsports. A new look for that team, and they look very strong here in the early goings of 2022.
We had a truck up into the wall there. I believe that was Charlie Bragg in the 08. He's going to drop back outside of the top 10 as a result of that contact with the outside safer barrier. Actually, correction, that was the 27 actually that got up and into the wall, but we still remain under the green flag, and at least for the moment, we got about maybe 15, 16 drivers throw a blanket over them in this lead pack. As soon as I say that, now make it about maybe 17, 18 trucks as that second group drafts back up to the lead pack.
Daniel Nanny able to hop up in front of Rodriguez, and now Daniel Nanny, he leads the high side. Rodriguez giving him a good push coming into 1 and 2, and now Nanny going to play the field. He's going to jump to the inside now. He leads the field. Daniel Nanny with a phenomenal move, able to put himself in the lead, a prior champion.
Daniel Nanny would have been scheduled to roll off 6th on the starting lineup. If he wins this race, though, he would be starting up 1 row higher in 4th Look at the top side, though. Whoa, the 7 of Cody Giles getting Rodriguez a little loose there again.
Oh!
Shoving the heck out of Rodriguez, and then he gets loose in the middle. 3 wide at the front. How they kept it all together, I don't know. Great save by about 4 drivers right there.
Cody Giles has a great run coming into the trial. It's 3 wide, almost 4 wide for a second there. Here comes Rod Fosnaw.
Oh, another car getting hooked. Another car, Henderson.
Big accident.
3 trucks spinning down to the inside. Matthew Rodriguez was one of them. Ross Brockman was another, and we already mentioned Henderson, who was on the pole position for this, I do believe. Wow, that is not good for a couple of those drivers. Henderson, on the other hand, even though he right now is outside the top 15, because he's qualified second, he locked up the front row. So dodging a bullet there, at least for the 37 truck. He knows he's going to be starting up in the front for the upcoming main event.
Actually, Elliot Henderson will be starting at the back for that, Seth, because the front row is already locked, it being Justin Mons and Mike Teller. They're already locked into the front row, so Henderson will have to start wherever he finishes. Nothing is locked when it comes to these heat races in their starting lineups.
Yeah, you are correct on that. That's my fault, as we got a new leader out in front here. Christopher Heller, it's the first time. We mentioned him all night long, and all of a sudden, midway through this heat race, he's up front. He's got drafting help from Jordan Gonzalez, but Cody Giles on that top side with Gavin Fitzgerald determined to get to the front. He's made a couple of gutsy moves up there on the outside line here tonight.
Cody Giles leading that high side for Dark Horse, and then the giant Tiger machine right in behind him, Gavin Fitzgerald giving him a good push. Can they get there on the high side? Right now, Christopher Heller leading the field in that number 11 machine, making a rare appearance in the Truck Series for 25-11, getting a good push from Jordan Gonzalez in the number 3 machine.
Momentum is definitely on the top side right now, though, with Cody Giles and Gavin Fitzgerald. Little bit of a gap, though, back to the 23 of Robin Durr. 4 trucks on that inside line now, as we had a truck out of shape further back there. Gathers it back up. We've only got about 10 trucks, I do believe, up in this lead group, which is 4 more than we had in the lead group in the first heat race. Oh, 1 truck, that was Durr, I believe, that got a little out of shape there in the center of this lead group. Keeps it together. 5 trucks on the inside, 4 trucks on the top side, but still dead even. And now, to the point goes Giles.
Cody Giles takes the lead here at heat number 2. 2 laps to go. Gavin Fitzgerald now leads the high side as Cody goes to the inside in front of the 2 25-11 machines of Gonzalez and Heller. Fitzgerald leads the high side with Robin Durr making his first start, I think, here in Great Lakes competition, giving a push to Gavin Fitzgerald on the high side. And there's contact behind him between Barba Gelada and that looks like Nathan Nicholson. They keep it straight for now. It's 3 wide. There goes Fitzgerald. He's in the wall hard. Wow. Oh, man.
Sure. Frederick Cremines is involved in that one as well. 3-4 trucks, as now it's just basically 2 truck tandem in here with the white flag. Cody Giles, Christopher Heller, they've got about a second back to Jordan Gonzalez and Daniel Nanny. We'll see if they've got enough time to reel in the top 2.
And you have to keep in mind, Christopher Heller and Jordan Gonzalez are teammates. So I would not be surprised to see Heller try to make a move so his teammate can maybe get up there before the end of this heat. Or does Heller wait until the last moment to maybe make a move on the number 7 of Giles?
Laps closing up, 7/10 of a second, 6/10 of a second. Oh, and now we got Nanny around there in turn 4. That's going to break up that second group. Well, hold on a second. Gonzalez still has the momentum, still has the slipstream off the back of the 11. Let's see. Heller jumps to the top, coming to the checkers, pins down for the side draft, and it's going to be Heller, maybe by a splitter. It was 4 1,000ths.
4 thousandths of a second. Heller got edged out in the All-Star race after spinning across the line, and he's able to edge out Giles by 4 thousandths of a second. Huge contact coming across the line between Cody and Heller. And Heller able to snag heat number 2, and he will be starting 4th in the FRN 200 here in a few minutes.
That is a net gain of 16 positions that Heller just had right there with that victory. Would have rolled off 26th if we hadn't have had these heat races, and improves up, as you mentioned, to the outside of row number 2 for the upcoming FRN 200. Well, pole day qualifying's in the books. The heat races are in the books. The lineup is now official for tonight's FRN 200. And these drivers now have 80 laps ahead of them here to see who's going to claim the first checkered flag of Season 5.
They got a couple of minutes of a warm-up here. And we're going to see who is going to get the first checkered flag of the season here in Great Lakes competition here at Daytona International Speedway. We have 80 laps here under the lights. Actually, no, they're going straight to the feature, it looks like. We're going straight to the feature. My bad about that. I wasn't aware about that, but we're going straight to the feature. They are beginning to grid up as we speak here for the FRN 200 to start off the season.
All right, so Kyle, I'm going to kind of put you on the hot seat here. Brand new season, getting ready to take to the high banks of Daytona. How do you approach this race here tonight? Do you go for broke, bring home the trophy, bring home the steering wheel, or are you kind of thinking big picture here tonight?
I think you really have to think of big picture here tonight, Seth. You got to drive it safe. It's a very long season. Daytona takes out a lot of drivers. Who knows who you can see involved in incidents tonight? A lot of these drivers are going to be competing for the championship this season. Some of these drivers are here for a one-off or here for a couple of races, but a good amount of these drivers are competing for a championship. You never know. We have a big accident. You can get Hunter Madalinas, Daniel Nanny, Jake Miller involved in that accident. Some heavy hitters here in Great Lakes competition. If you can keep your truck clean all day and snag a top 5, top 10, you're already going to have a huge advantage on points when it comes to those drivers. Just play it safe and see what happens in those last few laps. Save your truck for those last few laps and then go hard. See what you can do.
Gonna have a total of 42 drivers taking the green flag in tonight's season opener. You can see now that the sun has completely gone down behind the Daytona Beach horizon. The track completely bathed in darkness. Of course, nighttime conditions usually means the track's going to be a little bit cooler and add a little bit more grip. But when you're down here in southern Florida and you've got these drivers turning circuits of a little under 55 seconds a lap, I don't think there's going to be much opportunity for the track to be able to cool down. It's going to be very interesting to see here out of the gate what these drivers are going to do at the front, in the middle, at the rear of the field. Different drivers with different agendas. It's almost kind of like a 200-mile-per-hour chess match, and nobody necessarily knows what the next move's going to be of the drivers around them.
Yeah, I'm very curious, Seth, on how they're going to start off this race, because when we had those heat races for the All-Star event last week, one heat race was just completely insane from beginning to end. Then the other race was very calm up until maybe the last lap, and then everything seemed to hit the fan. We're going to see right now here on the Flatout Racing Network as the pace truck pulls down pit road, and Justin Mons leads him down to the green flag as it waves here at Daytona International for the FRN 200. 80 laps right around here.
Into turn one they head. Mons on the inside with Henry. Tellier on the top side with Heller. Inside advantage, at least for the moment. First, second, maybe third truck on the inside line getting clear off of turn number 2. Got a couple of drivers mid-pack going below that double yellow line, dropping to the back. That is legal. You can drop back and lose positions. You just cannot advance your position down there. So I think we're starting to see some of the drivers adapting the self-preservation strategy early on. And how about this? Mike Tellier, with help from Christopher Heller and Cody Giles, they're going to make the top line work here off of 4.
Mike Tellier looking to lead lap number 1 of the FRN 200 in the FRN 84 right there. He leads the first lap of the season, and Mons now jumps to the inside, and he's going to retake the lead with the help from Zachary Henry and Matt Daniels not too far behind them.
Like a couple of those drivers. Oh, got another one dropping out there. going towards the back. I believe that's the 10 of Hunter Brittle. At about 5-6 trucks that have dropped back to around the 25th to 30th position, staying out of harm's way. As up at the front, Justin Mons continues to show the way. Zach Henry in second. The battle is side by side for third. Daniels on the bottom, Tellier on the top, and look at the move there by Mons. He saw the momentum with Tellier on the top side through the tri-oval, throws a gutsy block, and now might pay the price for it. Stuck in the middle, 3 wide.
A very, very gutsy and aggressive move for this early on in an 80-lap race. Need to keep that in mind if you're someone just like Justin Mons up there at the front of the field. A very long race, no need to make moves like that early. And he's going to pay the price, it looks like. He's in the middle right now, and seems to get a little help, and he gets back in front of Tellier on the high side, actually, with a little help, with it looked like to be from Nathan Nicholson in the number 18 machine.
Couple of gutsy moves being made here in the early stages, and of course, well-known saying, you cannot win the race in the first half, but you can certainly lose it. Last thing you want to do, less than 10 laps in this race, heck, less than 5 laps into this race, is have a torn-up truck and basically just be riding around for the remainder of the season opener, but they continue to push and shove up at the front. Tellier continuing to get the aid of Christopher Heller on that outside line as Mon jumped back down to pick up Zach Henry in the 12. They still remain side by side off of turn 2. Neither lane given an inch, pretty even all the way back through the top 20.
Tellier trying to take that lead. If he clears the 41, does he jump to the inside? I personally wouldn't, because Heller's giving him a great push, but there he goes. Right when I say it, there goes Tellier to the inside, and now Christopher Heller leads the high side with his former teammate, Nathan Nicholson, right in behind him.
Wondered if Tellier might jump back up to the top off of 4, try and toe the outside line, but nope, stays on the bottom. Christopher Heller says thank you very much as the lead truck on that outside line. He's got Nathan Nicholson there to help him. That beautiful Jack Sprague throwback on the 0 truck. And he is going to help push the 11 just barely out in front by a splitter off of turn number 2.
Nathan Nicholson, a new member to Dark Horse Motorsports, and he has his teammate of Cody Giles right in behind him. Those two are going to try to work together now on the high side as Heller has moved to the inside in front of Tellier.
Talked about it back in the second heat. Cody Giles, one of the best pushers in the business. Let's see if he can get Nathan Nicholson out in front, looking to lock up the bumper to the 0. They're going to make a lot of headway here. Oh, but look at this. Nicholson jumps to the bottom right in front of Christopher Heller. Now that opens up the top side for Cody Giles to try and lead the second lane around.
Giles currently the head of the high side. Does his teammate Nicholson jump back to the high side? Oh, there goes Giles, almost spins it. A phenomenal save. Got a bad bump from Madalinas, it looked like, on the backstretch. The number 84 immediately backs out. Madalinas now jumps to the inside, and that really jumbles up this whole pack right here.
Mike Tellier paid the big price there, was running down on the apron, hoping for a lane back up as they entered into turn number 3. He was able to tuck in front of Aaron Duckclose in the 97. Drops from what was around the 4th position now back to around 8th place, as it's going to be single file amongst the top 4 now. Giles side by side with Tellier back for the 7th position, so all of a sudden what was side by side all the way through the field has turned into a single file train, at least amongst the top 5, 6, now make it the top 10.
Things have calmed down.
Wow, we got a car out of shape back there. Nice save. Couldn't tell who that was, but he almost got up into the outside wall. Might have actually brushed the outside wall there mid-pack. Kept it straight, though. We avoid a yellow flag.
Things have calmed down for a moment here. Great move from Mons right there, able to get himself into the 3rd spot, but single file here at the front of the pack. They're around 15th place. They're beginning to battle it out a little bit, but for the most part, at the front part of this field, they have calmed down after that almost incident on the backstretch almost 2 laps ago.
We have all of a sudden turned into single file train racing, and the Pied Piper, the engine of this train, that net zero Chevy Silverado of Nathan Nicholson. Shane Neiswanger was actually the truck that was out of shape a couple laps ago off of turn number 2. Right now running back in the 20th position, so 7.5 laps, about to be 8 laps in the books. No caution as of yet, and everybody now I think has gone into ride mode. They've basically said, all right, we've gotten all the early preseason jitters out. We've taken out our aggression in the early stages. Now it's time to make sure that these trucks are going to be in one piece, especially the fact that, they could possibly be strategizing for their first round of green flag pit stops here this season. Of course, a 75% fuel cell for these guys here this year.
The pit stops. Will we get those green flag pit stops? Almost every time we get to these super speedways, right before we get to those pit stops, we seem to get a caution. So I'm not going to go all in on that yet. As you see, Mons, he's done this a couple of times. I watched him make this move for third. He gets a slingshot sort of move, and then he just side drafts the other driver and kind of pulls him back and gets in front of him. Wasn't able to work that time because he tried to leapfrog from third to first. I think he just bit off more than he could chew right there. Now he's trying to find his spot back in line.
He is a lonely, lonely man right now in that 41, dropping back now to around 7th. He may fall outside of the top 10 before he's able to find a space in line. Was running, as you said, in third. Looks like he is going to tuck right in front of Cody Giles into the 8th position. So, you think about that with Cody Giles letting Justin Mons in. You got to make friends, got to make alliances. You got to wonder if Mons will remember that later on in this race.
Giles being a new addition to Dark Horse Motorsports, like I was mentioning earlier, a lot of these teams, there was a couple of big teams and there was a bunch of little teams who were kind of separated. A lot of drivers separated into 2-car teams or free agents and stuff like that. Dark Horse, if I remember correctly, last season was a 2 or a 3-car team. This season they're a 5-car team, adding in Cody Giles and Nathan Nicholson. They already have Justin Mons, Hunter Brittle, and Shane Neiswanger. So some teammate chemistry there from Mons and Giles. Giles and Mons just were working well together in the All-Star event the other night.
Looks like that outside line is starting to form. It's the 5 of Matt Daniels who is going to be the leader of that second groove. Now Nicholson sees it coming. He jumps up to try and block. Daniels going to take him 3 wide, and we've got a wreck. Caution is out for the first time tonight. Looks like Eric Kempf, RJ Williams, and a couple of others have run into some problems in the middle of 3 and 4.
Just when I thought we might get a wreck at the front of the field, drivers near the back portion of the field start going around. A couple of drivers involved in this incident, like Eric Kempf, got spun around, doesn't have too much damage, it looks like, on the 63 machine, compared to a couple of these other drivers. Not a huge accident for a track like Daytona, but a couple of cars involved in this incident for the first caution of the 2022 season.
They were doubling up at the front of the field, and at the back portion of that double wide formation is where the incident begins. I believe that the 10 of Hunter Brittle was in the vicinity of the initial contact.
Definitely a nasty accident for some of those that were involved. Gonna see what happens here under the caution flag, see if some drivers maybe get some gas and stuff. And I'm looking at the chat now. It looks like Frederick Kamines might have been penalized for the incident. I'm not exactly sure. I think it might be an incident penalty. He has received an end of the longest line penalty from the race director.
Yeah, looking just like maybe a bad bump going into turn 1. Kamines into the right rear of Daniel Nanny, sending him up the racetrack. And I said about 3 drivers' names when the incident originally occurred. There were actually more than that, maybe about upwards of 6 or 7 drivers getting bits and pieces of the incident. We had a second group of trucks, kind of stragglers, if you will, that entered into the vicinity. All of them, fortunately, were able to get on the brakes, slow down, and not get involved in this wreck. But first caution of the day comes out, and a couple of drivers took some pretty hard shots into that outside safer barrier. Definitely some hard hits here early on. As you saw, most of the field came down pit road. It looked like Matthew Rodriguez might have stayed out, and Brett Kingcott might have missed his pit box. I'm not exactly sure. He got out way before everybody else. And a lot of drivers came down to change some tires and get some gas into their trucks. Madalinas
Hunter Madalinas, last season's win leader with 6 wins last season, able to get off pit road first, able to beat off Christopher Heller and Charlie Bragg in the 08.
Mentioned about the 6 of Brent Kingcott. He indeed did miss his pit stall. A couple of actually drivers missing their pit stalls here. Charlie Bragg, Aaron Duclos, and Rod Fastenau. They all missed their pit stalls, and that's some of the things of early on in the season as well. Got to work out those kinks of recognizing where your pit sign is, where your pit stall is. By the time we get to next week and a couple of weeks later from this evening, they'll have all those kinks worked out for sure.
You were mentioning next week here for the Great Lakes Truck Series. We have an exciting schedule planned out. Next week we go to Las Vegas Motor Speedway here for the Truck Series. That should be a blast. Head on to Worldwide Technology Raceway. Overall, have a very fun schedule planned. We got the Roval at some point. We got Bristol Dirt. We have some fun playoffs going on at Watkins Glen and Darlington, Martinsville, amongst other tracks. And then we finish off the season at Atlanta this season for the Great Lakes Truck Series. We finished the season at Atlanta on June 14th. That will be the season finale for this season.
Lights out atop the iRacing pace truck. Matthew Rodriguez, I thought he might be playing the strategy of staying out, leading the lap, and then come to pit lane the following time. No, he does not elect to come to pit lane under this caution period. He'll be the one to lead us to green. Hunter Madalinas will line up to his outside with Christopher Heller, Nathan Nicholson, and Tyler McLennan, the top 5. Zach Henry, Matt Daniels, Nathan Nixon, Gabriel Truesdale, and Justin Mons. That's going to be the top 10 when we get ready to go back racing. A couple of drivers still sit on pit lane, getting multiple repairs done to their trucks, including the 30 of Daniel Nanny and the 00 of Aiden DuPont. Those were 2 drivers in particular that had extensive damage to the front end of their race trucks in what brought out the caution for the first time here tonight. And obviously, as we know, Kyle, especially in the front end housing where all the aerodynamics and the engine is, if you've got damage like that at super speedway, you're going to have a very difficult time staying in the draft.
Yeah, just a little bit of nose or front end damage just kills your race car, or in this case, race truck. You can survive with maybe a little bit of side damage, maybe even a little bit of bumper damage, but having that nose, hood, front end damage, it's just killer. As the pace truck pulls down pit road once again, we're going to get the green flag here in the FRN 200 after the first caution. Matthew Rodriguez leads him down to the green flag. Hunter Madalinas on his high side. Heller right in behind Matthew Rodriguez, and a good push on the high side from Nicholson to Madalinas as well. These 4 have separated themselves from the field a little bit off the start.
It was a heck of a push there by Mickelson. Almost a 2-truck tandem, able to beat 3-4 trucks in the inside line. But now the numbers start to go into the favor of the lower lane as Matthew Rodriguez, half a truck length, almost clear. Ooh, he almost got a little bit too much of a shove there by Christopher Heller. That's not the first time we've seen him get a hit from behind and almost lose it. He had a little bit of trouble keeping his truck underneath him in the second heat race as well.
Having a little bit of trouble keeping that truck underneath him, but right now everybody's still lined up kind of like the beginning of this race, and we've seen in the heat races, everybody kind of lined up on the inside and high side and not too much separation. But right when I say that, here comes Heller to the high side. He goes from the inside, and now he is going to lead the high side with the push from Hunter Madalinas. These are 2 of some of the best here in the Great Lakes Series. Christopher Heller and Hunter Madalinas working together right there to get past Matthew Rodriguez.
And Heller's going to drop down to the inside here, leaving Madalinas on that outside line. It's interesting that we see so many drivers in that second lane get pushed to the front. As soon as they're clear, though, they drop down to the inside line. You would think if there's so much momentum up on that outside, they'd stay up there and continue to tow that second lane, but that's not been the case really here tonight at all, as Madalinas now will pull alongside of Heller for the top spot.
Madalinas and Heller, now they're going back and forth. Heller leading the inside, Madalinas leading the high side. Madalinas getting that push from the number 18 of Nathan Nicholson. Nicholson not able to give him a great push coming out of the corner, and Heller able to separate a little bit, but now here comes Nicholson on the backstretch. You've mentioned it, Seth, on the back straightaway, that high side just really gets working. Nicholson gives him a huge push. Madeline's able to clear him going into 3 and 4.
Down to the bottom now in front of Heller. Ooh, almost a little contact there for the second position between the 11 and the 0. It's now Nathan Nixon who's the wingman for Nicholson on that top side, trying to keep the momentum going. Justin Mons right there as well, our pole sitter.
Justin Mons getting back up there into the battle for the lead. Fell back for a little bit there, and he's back trying to get back up there. You see Tyler McClellan up there as well in the number 1 machine, looking strong on the inside in that powder blue number 1. Now he's going to jump to the inside and fall to the back, maybe getting his spidey senses tingling. Maybe we get an accident here soon.
That's the second time that McLennan has done that. He did that in the early stages of this race as well when he started up inside of the top 10, immediately dropped to the inside line of the back straightaway and fell back. He does it again here, and that's the thing too. You got to have a sixth sense about super speedway racing. When you see the action around you and you feel it's not a safe place to be, better to get out of Dodge sooner rather than later, as Madalinas continues to show the way. Interesting, Hunter Madalinas, a 6-time winner last season, but none of those victories came at a super speedway. He didn't take part in the season opener at Daytona and finished 13th at the Talladega race. So you got to think a super speedway race is something he wants to have on his resume here in the Great Lakes Racing Series.
Hunter Madalinas, before I really saw him race last season, I knew him mainly as a road course ringer, just a phenomenal road course driver. But then he came on, he kind of bursted onto the season last season for the Great Lakes Truck Series, came onto the scene, won 6 races in the regular season, was the regular season champion, but then just wasn't able to get the job done in the playoffs, missed out on the championship 4.
Madalinas does have a win here in the Truck Series at Daytona, but it was, as you have alluded to, on the road course configuration. So looking to maybe go for the Daytona sweep here in his career, as also winning here on the super speedway configuration. We're back to the side-by-side, all the way back to maybe around the 14th, 15th position. Matthew Rodriguez and Christopher Heller trying to push Madalinas on the inside line. Nixon and Mons trying to help propel Nicholson on that top side, but it seems like the inside line gets that advantage when you go into the corner, but from the center off, the straightaway speed goes to the top side.
And Nathan Nixon trying to make some moves up here in the front, peeking to that high side of Nathan Nicholson, seeing if Mons might go with him. But I don't think Mons will go with him, as Nicholson is his teammate. Nixon drops in right back behind Nicholson as he continues to peek to that high side. And that high side's beginning to fall back quite a bit because Nixon's not really working with Nicholson at the moment.
Got a couple of names just inside, just outside the top 10 now, making their first appearances up towards the front. Gabriel Truesdale in the 60, right now unofficially in the 9th position. Austin Moore knocking on the door of a top 10. He's now going to just barely edge ahead of Cody Giles for that 10th position. And Shane Neiswanger, who we saw have an issue off of turn 2 early on in this race, got up into the outside wall. Nice rebound for him. Right now running in the 12th spot, just outside of the top 10.
Shane Neiswanger, a very competitive driver, very, very consistent. Usually a top 10 driver, and there's certain tracks and certain setups he just really thrives on. And I know he's a great super speedway racer. We've seen it before. He can get really competitive, especially at the end of these races. Races fairly smart out here at Daytona and Talladega.
Now, it may be too early to say, but ever since getting involved in that first caution, Eric Kempf has not made up a whole lot of progress. The former winner here at Daytona, right now back in the 27th position. It didn't look like at first glance he got a lot of damage to the front end, but he's obviously still up here in the draft. We'll have to see if he's got a truck strong enough to get up here in the closing stages, as he's the only former winner here at Daytona in the field here tonight. The odds very much so looking like we're going to have a brand new winner here at this 2.5 mile super speedway. We've got 39 drivers still on the racetrack. 38 of them look like they're up in the lead pack. Peter Akumano has lost the lead pack. As a matter of fact, he's only about, you see him there on the same straightaway as the race leaders. He's about maybe a lap and a half away from being put a lap down to green flag conditions.
We're going to see how these leaders react if they have to put a couple of trucks a lap down. You know, it seems to get really difficult at these super speedways, but right now, the way they're racing, they should be able to get past any lap cars with ease. But at the end of these races, when they're racing 3 wide, things turn to get real insane.
Here you see the wounded car of Akumano going to yield to the third lane. Fortunately, all the way through this lead group, they were racing double wide, so easily able to make their way around him. Doesn't look like that affected the outside line other, and oh, we got a car bailing out there on the inside lines. That's, I believe, the 91 of Austin Moore, feeling that it's time to make an exit out of the top 10.
Austin Moore falling back. I would like to make a note. We have to remember that Matthew Rodriguez did not come down pit road underneath that last caution. So you have to wonder how much fuel he has left in that tank. We're here at Daytona. It's not like we're at Rockingham or Atlanta or one of those tracks where you can get away with short pitting and doing stuff along those lines. Here at Daytona, if you don't pit with other drivers, you are going to be hurt.
Great point there. Matthew Rodriguez has not pitted since we took the green flag to start this race. Stayed out under the pacing laps of our only caution, and he's got a couple of teammates in the field here. You have to wonder, you know, the 84 of Mike Tellier, if Rodriguez has to dive to pit lane, would Tellier go off pit sequence and come down with him? Because you come down pit lane and you come off all by your lonesome, the field is going to gobble you up. And obviously, Matthew Rodriguez was of the assumption we were probably going to see another yellow flag by now. That has not been the case, so that strategy has not worked out in his favor, at least at this point in time.
Yeah, someone like Matthew Rodriguez really needs friends, and that affiliate of Mike Tellier for FRN could be the help he might need.
We're hearing that someone just got forced into the outside retaining wall. We actually also had a moment with, I believe it was the 41 of Justin Mons. He got his left sides down on the double yellow line. So all of a sudden, the handling going away on these trucks, and there's Rodriguez diving to pit lane. All by his lonesome. Matthew Rodriguez comes down to the attention of his crew for the first time tonight.
There you saw the replay right there. It looks like it just got a little too tight for Jake the Snake Miller. Gets up into the wall right there in turns 1 and 2 and fell back pretty hard. Still pretty early on. Jake's a phenomenal race car driver. I wouldn't count him quite out yet. And here comes, you mentioned it, Seth, Matthew Rodriguez, M-Rod, coming down pit road, able to make that pit stop and take that fuel. But now at this point, he's really preying on a caution to come out because he will be lapped pretty soon here, Seth. And if anything, he might be able to compete for that lucky dog position once he goes a lap down.
If you're Matthew Rodriguez right now, you're racing Peter Akumano for that first car 1 lap down to be able to get the free pass should we have a yellow flag. I don't even think if we end up having these drivers go long enough to have to make green flag pit stops that would save him. He is all or nothing, needing that yellow flag to come out and save his race, as still up at the front. It's kind of been a broken record here tonight, but it's been this way in the heat races. It's been this way here tonight in the main event. Side by side from the front all the way back through the lead pack. Neither lane giving an inch. And at what point, if you're Madalinas on the inside or Nicholson on the top side, do you start to get frustrated, saying, hey, I've got the momentum on my side at one point. I just can't seem to get clear on this guy.
It's almost like the lanes stall each other out almost, Seth. Like, it's just so hard to complete a pass once these lanes are both working as well as they've been working throughout this race. You just see the 18 and the number 9 going back and forth and back and forth. It hardly opens up the door for someone like Nixon up until that moment, because there goes the 18 to the inside of Nathan Nicholson goes to the inside with Madalinas leaving the door open for Nixon. But Nixon needs to get that push from Gabriel Truesdale on the backstretch, and here comes Madalinas now. He's going to go to the high side. Some switching back and forth as Nicholson goes to the back.
Not sure what's going on with Nathan Nicholson down on the apron. Gonna come back up around the 25th position. That was awfully strange for a truck that had just gotten to the race lead, immediately dropping down below the W line and fading outside of the top 20. You have to wonder if that's strategy or if there's something maybe just a little bit more sinister going on there. Maybe the water temps running high because these guys are packing right under each other's rear tailgates. So you got to wonder if maybe the water temps in the engine, cooling the engine down, is a factor for these drivers.
Just taking a closer look of what had happened off turns 1 and 2 that time, it looked like Madalinas might have given him a slight bump, and Nicholson got loose and then maybe just got freaked out and was at that point like, I'm just going to go to the back. These guys are racing hard. Let them wreck, and we'll come back to the front later.
Change the landscape of the front now as Christopher Heller is going to be leading the inside line. Zach Henry now right behind him. Henry riding around the 6th or 7th position. We saw him up at the front earlier on, so now makes his appearance back up inside of the top 3. Meanwhile, Madalinas up to the outside line with Nathan Nixon, and there is Matthew Rodriguez in the 57 right now on the lead lap, but about to lose that lap, and it would put him first car 1 lap down. Now again, still hoping for the yellow flag to come out. It would give him the free pass position. He just got to merge in here with this lead group and keep himself ahead of Acumano.
You best believe that Cookie Monster wants his cookies. He wants to get that lucky dog, Matthew Rodriguez. Now he has to play the waiting game and hopes he gets that caution flag that comes out to put him back onto the lead lap. And also, just to keep in mind, he's on a different strategy now. So these drivers that are in front of him on the lead lap are going to have to make a pit stop at some point and let Matthew Rodriguez back onto the lead lap. And we've seen how pit road gets crazy at these super speedways. Can we have a big accident coming onto pit road, and that brings out the caution for Matthew Rodriguez?
These drivers are nearing the 20th lap on this stint since our first and only caution, so looking ahead potentially to that first round of green flag pit stops. Looks like at least right now things somewhat spread out amongst this lead pack all the way back through the field, so one would think that orchestrating a party to pit lane wouldn't be that difficult, but then again, different drivers have different areas where they like to slow their trucks down, and sometimes we see how pit road and pit road entry can bring about just as much torn up race cars and trucks in this case as out on the racing surface itself.
Yeah, I expect those green flag stops to happen here in just a few laps if we don't get a caution, because Matthew Rodriguez was able to stay out for around 25 laps on that tank of fuel. These drivers have been on track for around 20 laps on this tank of fuel, so I expect some pit stops here within the next couple of laps unless we get a caution. That might be one of the reasons why you're now beginning to see the whole field single out right now.
You know, it's interesting you brought up a point about how last season, just when we would start to get to green flag pit stops, we would end up having cautions come out. And I remember there was a super speedway racer, I asked why that was the case, and he says, what you're actually doing out there just prior to coming to pit lane, you're positioning yourself for the pit stop. You're picking up that extra 1 or 2 spots on the racetrack and then trying to build off of that when you come down pit lane. So as we see an outside line continue to try and push their way to the front, that's what Nathan Nixon and Gabriel Truesdale are trying to do. They're trying to pick up maybe those extra positions that could aid them in getting 2 or 3 more spots by time the pit stop cycles are complete.
All about positioning yourself for this next run, because then you're basically positioning yourself for the end of the race right now if we're able to keep it green, because we know how these super speedway races can possibly get. If you make it to that first green flag pit stop, the field tends to really split up quite a bit, so we could have a green flag race possibly to the end if we make it to this green flag stop. You never know.
Here's the 13 of Lewis Woodall, may have had some connection problems. We'll update you on whether or not he is able to return. Right now, he is running in the 39th position. That's where he scored 2 laps down. As up at the front, Madalinas continues to lead that inside line. And what's so impressive to me is on that outside line, you see only 2, 3, maybe 4 trucks against 12, 13, 14 trucks on that inside line. And that outside line is still able to make forward progress. I would have to assume a big portion of the reason that is, you've got a little bit more momentum, a little bit more space to stay in the throttle coming off of turn 2 and off of turn 4, whereas on that inside line, you've got the checkup of drivers getting runs on each other going into the corner, and then maybe feeling a little bit of aero tightness of the truck wanting to push up the shorter way around the racetrack.
Watch these drivers go back and forth, and as we see Eric Kep looks like he's came on to pit road. A couple other drivers on pit road as well, as the green flag stops have started right here. Looks like maybe Kevin Watler is on pit road, Aaron Duclos, a couple other drivers down there on pit road, and they're your first couple of drivers to make green flag stops. Gonna see if more drivers come on pit road this time, and they do. Our race leader comes down pit road. Looks like Madalinas will come down pit road with Christopher Heller. Zach Henry comes into pit road very hot. Don't know if he got underneath the speed limit. Matt Daniels on pit road as well.
Jordan Gonzalez also coming down, completing those 5 trucks, hitting pit lane on the completion of lap 36. And to your point, Super Speedway is not a place that you can afford a speeding penalty, especially if you come down with a group, because much like we saw there in the case of Matthew Rodriguez, when you come down to serve that penalty, you're going to have to do it all by yourself, and there's no guarantee that you're then going to merge back out onto the racetrack with a group of trucks.
There's never a guarantee for anything at a super speedway like Daytona. We're going to see more drivers come down pit road this time by. It looks like Nathan Nixon, Gabriel Truesdale, a couple other drivers look like they might be coming down pit road behind them.
Adam Waddell, also Chris White, Charlie Bragg, Zach Furtick, Rick Gosser, and Robin Durr, all indicating they were coming to pit lane this time. But a couple of names up here at the front, maybe getting themselves some bonus points for laps led. Rod Fastnow in the 16, as Brent Kingcott right behind him. Shane Neiswanger there as well. These are drivers we're still waiting to hit pit lane. Cody Giles now up to 5th. Mike Tellier currently in the 6th position.
How long do they stay out? Some of these drivers might be hoping that a caution comes out. We're going to see most of them come down pit road this time by. Almost all of them. Very, very intense entry to pit road right there, but it looks like they're going to make it onto pit road for the most part. Clean right until there. Look like he might have gotten a bump. It looked like that might be the 31 right there.
That was indeed Breyer Fritz, and I believe that the bump might have come possibly from Mons in the 41. He is able to back his truck up into his pit stall, but that's going to lose him valuable time. And when it comes to super speedway racing, seconds, even milliseconds, can be a difference maker in the outcome of your race. As looks like we should have our remaining 2 drivers that are yet to make a pit stop coming down this time. Fastnaw in the 16, Kingcott in the 6. This will complete the cycle of green flag pit stops for the first time this season.
And since these 2 drivers are coming in by themselves, they're going to have pretty much perfect stops, perfect exits, perfect entries, because there's a good chance they might miss out on this draft, because these drivers are drafting around the track with multiple drivers compared to their 2 drivers. They make up a lot of time just in that one lap where it was just those 2.
We saw in the early 40 laps of this race, drivers side by side for the race lead all the way back through the top 20. Now with the cycle of green flag pit stops, we enter into a new phase of this race where drivers kind of have their own little parties of machines trying to make the best speed possible to keep the rest of their competition at bay. You've got a pack of 4 up here at the front. Madalinas, Henry, Heller, and Matt Daniels. Go back about a second to another group of about 5 being led by Shane Neiswanger, then another second and a half before you get to another group of 3 or 4 led by Nicholson. Then the rest of the field's all bunched up together from about Eric Kempf in 14th place on back. You got about 10 to 12 trucks there We know that the more trucks you have, the more speed you're going to generate, so now the question is, how long before we have ourselves one big pack of trucks again?
You can definitely see the possibility, but then you see Henderson and this group of guys coming towards the leaders right now. If these drivers work together and all line up, this battle can just be between them. It's around 10 drivers that would battle it out for the victory if they all just gather up right here and take it easy and learn to work with one another.
Elliott Henderson now dropping towards the back of this lead pack. Looks like he'll tuck in around 8th. But how about Elliott Henderson? If you look back at the heat race where he started on the pole, got involved in that incident in the closing stages, finished outside of the top 20, had himself a very poor starting position, but using these green flag pit stops to improve his track position here. We also talked about Jake Miller getting up into the wall. Right now he's in the 7th place. There's a couple of drivers, even here in the first half of this race, that have overcome some early disadvantages and kind of turned it to their benefit.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about Jake Miller. You could never count him out. He could have a destroyed race car. He could still be out there, a very aggressive driver in that number 4 machine, but has proven time and time again that he's also one of the best drivers here in the Great Lakes Series. And he's looking to snag a victory here in a crown jewel of the Great Lakes Series as the FRN 200. There you have the onboard of the number 4 machine of Jake Miller.
Right now, riding behind Mike Tellier, just ahead of Cody Giles. Jake Miller in that 4th position as things get single file once again. Back to around the 12th place truck of Austin Moore. And Matthew Rodriguez, this green flag pit stop cycle helps to get him back on the lead lap. Right now, running 16 seconds behind the leader in the 33rd position. He's actually found a couple of trucks back there to be able to draft with. We mentioned that we would update you on Lewis Woodall. He has returned back to the server, but he is 2 laps down in 39th. Peter Accumano lost another lap under those green flag pit stops as well. He's 2 laps down, and a little bit of connection problems for Jordan Gonzalez, dropping him a lap down in 37th. He would be in the free pass position should we see a yellow flag.
I would like to mention that whole second pack had a big separation on a lap ago. I don't know if we can get a replay of it. It's around a lap, maybe 2 laps ago, coming out of 3 and 4. Almost a huge accident. Gavin Fitzgerald got completely sideways. Justin Mons had some pretty heavy contact. And Aaron Duclos, a huge accident on lap number 42, coming off turns 3 and 4. That was almost really, really bad. And I don't know how none of them ended up wrecking. And they kept it all straight. But a huge separation for that second pack, and they lost even more time to the front pack as the second pack is trailing the first pack by almost 7 seconds at the moment.
Caution that maybe should have happened and never did. Great saves by Gavin Fitzgerald and Justin Mons. Looks like there's a little bit of right rear damage to the 14 of Fitzgerald. And again, we've talked about this. You want to have your truck as aerodynamically sound as possible. Doesn't matter if the damage is to the front, if the damage is to the rear, or more importantly, that rear spoiler. It's going to affect your speed, and we'll have to see how that's going to affect Gavin Fitzgerald for the rest of this race. He dropped back to the 24th position. Mons able to gather it back up, still runs in 18th place. But to your point, great job by all those drivers to keep it pointed in the right direction, especially coming off of turn number 4, coming from the banking, the high banking of the corner down to the slightly less banking onto the front straightaway.
Definitely some great reactions and great hands from a lot of those drivers. Just the way I saw it from the first look, it kind of looked like Barbara Gelada had to check up quite a bit, and Gavin got into his bumper and almost lost it and made some pretty heavy contact with Duclos and Mons and a couple other drivers, but everyone's able to keep it straight, and I don't think any of that damage is significant enough to take them out of the race. As you go back to the leaders right here, this front pack is just sticking together. This front 12 of cars is just, like I mentioned, if they just stick together, that second pack will not catch them because they are not organized, as you saw with the almost accident. This front 12 has kept it very organized as we're a little past halfway now here in the FRN 200, 35 laps to go.
About 3 laps ago, it was an advantage of 8 seconds from the leader of this pack, Hunter Matulanis, and the leader of the second pack, Kevin Walter. Now, almost 10 and a half, pushing towards 11 seconds. So to your point, Them racing single file right now is twofold. Number one, they're trying to open up the distance back there to 13th place on back, trying to make it a 12-driver race to the finish. Second thing as well might be they realize, hey, we've gotten through that first round of green flag pit stops. We're going to have at least one more trip to pit road before all is said and done. Let's just all be gentlemen here. Mind our P's and Q's. Keep our equipment all in one piece, and then when we get to that second round of green flag pit stops, whoever's around in that lead pack, then we can start racing it up with the checkered flag on the line.
Yeah, just keep on looking back at that second pack. They lost a lot of those drivers because of that accident. They lost maybe 5 to 10 different drivers from that pack, and they're still not organized with the drivers they have. The 16 and the 6. And Nixon are on the high side right now, fighting on the high side, while the inside isn't very close together. So that second pack isn't making any progress right now, but they're not losing a whole bunch of time right now as they were a couple of laps ago.
Walter and Rod Fastnow right now side by side for what would be the 13th position. And to your point, the longer you continue to run side by side, the longer the side draft is going to pull you back. It's going to hurt your speed in the attempt to try and run down the race leaders. They have gained a little bit, not much. They gained about 2 to 3 tenths of a second there at last lap, but they're going to need more consistent lap times just like that to be able to reel in this pack of 12, which have also picked up, looks like, a lap machine. So now make it 13 trucks up in this lead group trying to continue to pull away. I want to give a shout out to these guys though as well, because we talked about how important it is, the execution on pit road. It can make or break your race. The speeding police had nothing to be able to do on this first round of green flag pit stops. Everybody was able to come down pit lane, make their pit stop, leave pit road, and nobody had to serve a speeding penalty. But that was then. We still got another pit stop coming up, which more than likely could end up being the money stop.
Yeah, we're going to have at least one more pit stop before this race ends. There you see the second pack just still battling it out. They're not getting organized. That's the only way they're going to be able to get up here is if they get organized. And they just continue to battle very hard on the inside and the high side back here in pack number 2. There you see Nixon drop to the inside. Now Truesdale, he's going to have to drop to the inside. And maybe these drivers can finally begin to get organized down here.
That lap truck that's in this lead group is the 3 of Jordan Gonzalez. And as they just made their way around the 15 of Kyle Nogel, putting him a lap down, Gonzalez moved by, still in the free pass position. Same case there, Rick Grosser in the 34 going a lap down, but Gonzalez in this lead pack goes by him. So continuing to stay in the free pass position. Now 33 drivers on the lead lap as we close in on 30 laps to go here tonight in the FRN 200.
And this isn't a good situation for someone like Matthew Rodriguez. Matthew Rodriguez is still on the lead lap right now, but he's going to have to make that pit stop because he is off strategy. He's going to have to make that pit stop very soon in that number 57. And drivers like Jordan Gonzalez, Rick Grosser, Kyle Noggle, Aaron Duclos, a lot of these drivers didn't have necessarily speeding penalties, but just got caught out of the draft and fell to the back and ended up getting lapped by the leaders, and now they're in that lead draft. So it's very easy for them to be the first guy one lap down, and someone like Matthew Rodriguez to not get into that front pack. A driver like Jordan Gonzalez or Rick Grosser can get this lucky dog because they are in that front pack with the leaders as we speak.
As the leaders made their way out of the trioval last time, you may have seen a driver coming off of pit lane. That's the 00 of Aiden DuPont, who right now has scored last in this race, 39 laps down. But it's important to note that he's coming back out onto the racetrack because there's a couple of drivers ahead of him, Frederick Cremines and Daniel Nanny, who are a lap ahead of him in the scoring. If he can even complete 2 circuits, he would jump up 2 positions in the finishing results. And while it may seem inconsequential here tonight, when you get later on into the season, who knows? For DuPont, those 2 positions and those points could be very, very important.
Yeah, a driver like Aiden DuPont, I know he's going to be competing full-time here in the Truck Series, so I know he at least wants to try to make the playoffs. Started off the season, for the most part, pretty weak last season, had a good speed weeks in Daytona, but throughout the season, I saw improvement out of Aiden DuPont, and maybe he can improve quite enough to get into the playoffs in that number 00 machine. And that's what he needs to do. I read in the chat that he had 30 minutes of repairs to start off the season, and that was around 30 minutes ago. So he sat there and waited those 30 minutes out and got himself back onto the racetrack to try to get some points. Aiden DuPont, of course, racing for himself as a free agent for his own single car team, DuPont Racing Industries. Let's see what he can do here today. Try to get a couple more spots from drivers that are wrecked out.
Got some more traffic to deal with as Madalena says he's going to split up the middle. 3 trucks there that the leaders are going to try and make their way around. And you mentioned about taking nothing for granted here at super speedways. Last time by here through the center of the tribal, Madalena's got his left sides down that double yellow line, was fishtailing for a brief moment there, was able to gather it back up, but what looks calm right now out there on the racetrack is anything but when you're sitting behind the wheel of one of these trucks. Also, worth documenting, Matthew Rodriguez down pit lane, so he made his green flag pit stop, of course, off sequence, and according to the numbers I'm looking at here, he came down on the 25th lap of his run. That was with 29 laps to go, so he cannot make it to the conclusion of this race with what he's got in the tank right now.
Yeah, that call he made earlier to stay out could have been to his benefit if we had some more cautions like we would in most scenarios at Daytona. But these drivers have kept it clean for the most part here today, and it's really going to bite Matthew Rodriguez if we don't get another caution before this race is over. Because at this point, he won't even get the lucky dog. He will need a wave around sort of situation. And like you mentioned, Seth, he can't even make it to the end of the race on fuel from this point. So it's going to be a very uphill battle for the number 57. As you're looking at Austin Moore right now, just kind of everybody here in this front pack just kind of waiting it out for that last pit stop. And then we're going to see stuff really go down here, Seth.
Madalenas has led the entirety of this green flag run for the lead pack. Would he be worried, do you think, as far as his fuel situation? Because he's creating the draft for everybody else behind him. He is consuming the most fuel at this point in time. I'd have to assume that there's some communication going on with some of these other guys in this lead pack of, hey, I'm probably going to have to pit a lap or two sooner than you guys are, but please come down pit road with me so we can continue to work together.
In some scenarios, I would definitely see that as an issue, but in a race right now where they're not necessarily very close on fuel unless we start using up some green-white checkers, and Hunter Madalenas has a couple of teammates in this field. I'm not sure if he has any in the front pack at the moment, but Madalenas is a well-known driver and a very popular driver amongst other drivers, and he gets a lot of victories, so a lot of drivers might just go with him just because he is Hunter Madalenas.
We have now entered into 25 laps to go, 24 to go as lap 57 goes on the board. Of course, still one more trip to pit road for these drivers, but as the laps now, at this point in time, continue to tick away, the aggressiveness, the strategy all starts to come to the forefront for these drivers as they prepare to try and make their moves for the first checkered flag of the season. Still only 12 drivers up in this lead pack. You gotta think that these are drivers who do not want to see the caution flag come out, because if it does, all of a sudden we've taken and we have not only doubled, we've tripled the field size of drivers that have a shot of winning this race.
Yeah, if we get any sort of accident or caution, because there's not a lot of destroyed race cars out there, just differences in strategies and differences in how they performed on their pit stops has really separated this field. And I said that earlier before we had the first pit stop. It tends to happen in these races that go green at Daytona. The pack can just not stick together with the varying strategies. And if you're just a little slow coming out of pit road, that could be the difference between you snagging the draft and you completely missing out on the front pack.
We saw earlier on tonight a couple of incidents in each one of the qualifying heat races, but it's been nothing like that here in this main event, as we've only seen the caution come out in the early stages of this race. That's the only time the yellow flag has waved here this evening, but you mentioned the fact there are 3 green-white checkers available to these drivers. Of course, we've still got another trip to pit road. There's every chance We could end up seeing a yellow flag come out here in the final 20 laps of this race, change the landscape, and of course, give new life to drivers running 13th place on back. You've now got a huge pack of race cars in that second group. 13th place all the way back to around the 30th position, only about 9 second separation. So they've got themselves a pretty big group, but they just do not have the time to be able to get up there. 22 seconds right now, the gap from pack number 2 up to pack number 1.
They just don't have nearly enough time. They would have to catch up a second a lap, and that's just not possible with the way this front pack has been racing. And I would like to point out, in this front pack, we do have a little mini battle kind of going on in the front pack. You see the number three of Jordan Gonzalez. He's around 5th or 6th in line. He's currently in the lucky dog position. And in this pack, a couple of cars in behind him, you have Tyler McClellan, Rick Grosser, and Robin Durr, who are trying to maybe get into that lucky dog spot. I've seen the number 1 of Tyler McClellan jump to the high side a couple of times, trying to get that high side to work so he can get up to Gonzalez and snag that lucky dog if we would to get a caution here late.
Yeah, the race within the race, and of course the way the yellow flags work, depending on the 3, the 1, the 34, whoever has just even their splitter out in front of the rest of the competition would get the free pass. Pit road is going to be a busy place. About 10, 12 trucks just jumped down to the pit lane entry.
Oh, there goes Woodall. Lewis Woodall spins it out. Coming onto pit road, Woodall was 3 laps down, started the race on pit road to avoid the madness, and then ended up disconnecting due to internet issues and just hasn't been able to come back from that because of all this green flag, because of this big green flag run. Able to get it back going down pit road. There you see Woodall. He's going to pull into his pit box. We're going to see who can keep it together here out of this front pack.
About 7, 8 drivers from the lead pack come down pit road. Another 12 drivers from the second pack now hitting pit lane. There's a little bit of contact also on pit road between a few drivers, so we'll have to see if that might lead to some potential speeding penalties. And it's been there by Woodall. Fortunately stayed on pit lane, did not come back up onto the racing surface, so no yellow flag coming out at this point in time, as you got a 4-truck pack right now. Shane Neiswanger, Cody Giles, Nathan Nicholson, and Hunter Brittle staying out for an extra couple of laps.
And I would like also to point out, during that pit stop sequence out of the front pack, the number 1 of Tyler McClellan had a phenomenal pit stop, and he's able to get himself near the front of this pack. And Jordan Gonzalez lost a lot of spots, kind of fell to the back part of this pack. So now McClellan, if the pit stops end up running all the way through, McClellan will be the driver in the lucky dog position.
Here come the top 4 down pit lane, all giving each other the space necessary to be able to hit their braking zones, as Neiswanger will lead them down. Looks like we're waiting on a couple more drivers, 4 in total, from the second group. We'll see if they come down this time. Ross Brockman, Chris White, Zach Vertick, and Charlie Bragg. They've been running back in the third pack so far during this green flag run, and we'll see if any of them elect to stay out an extra lap or if they're going to come down this time. Most of them on the inside line, so I believe they are coming down to the attention of their crews.
You see a couple more drivers making those green flag stops as that first group passed them on the high side. Here you see coming down pit road to make their last stop of the day, possibly, unless we would get another caution. Now back to the front pack. There you see McClellan, the 3rd spot in line. He's in the lucky dog spot. That front 2, Heller and Madalinas, is a battle for the lead. Henderson right there as well. Zachary Henry, Austin Moore, Matt Daniels. These seem to be the guys that are going to compete for the win, as they have lost a couple of these drivers who are around a second and a half behind, including Nicholson, Neiswanger, Brittle, Tellier, and a couple other guys are back there that have lost ground after these pit stops.
Saw Christopher Heller perform really well in his heat race. Now has the race lead. The money stop has been completed for all of these drivers. Would be interesting to see for some of those that pitted much earlier on, like the 6 or 7 up in this lead group, if we did go into overtime, if they would have to come down pit lane, maybe top off the fuel tank, because they may have pit maybe just a lap or two sooner than I was expecting. But right now, be very interesting to see even what kind of a scenario we could have to bring out a yellow flag, as the field even more spread out than it was before that second and potentially final round of pit stops took place.
I say the most likely scenario of us getting a caution would be with 2 or 3 laps to go, and these drivers are trying to set up those last lap moves, because a lot of these drivers at this point, there is no big pack anymore. The biggest pack is that second pack, and I think there's maybe 8 or 9 cars in the pack. This pack right here has around 8 or 9 cars as well, but only 6 of these drivers are on the lead lap. So these drivers are going to be battling it out in those last 2 or 3 laps. There's no point in making it super aggressive right now, because if they make it super aggressive right now, Nicholson's only a second back with Brittle and Niswanger right there with them. They're almost in the draft as we speak.
They are indeed. That group of 3 are now going to close up onto the back of this lead group, and they're going to give us a total of 9 drivers in the hunt potentially for this victory. They continue to make their way by slower traffic, drivers that either got damage from the earlier incident in the beginning portions of this race or have just been off of pit sequence and lost laps accordingly. Also got that one of Tyler McLennan there. He is in the free pass position, but even more importantly, he could be the X factor. There's the yellow flag. Well, that just changed the entire landscape of the race.
And it looks like King Cott might have spun it around. Adam Waddle in 3 and 4 has a lot of damage. His motor's up in smoke. In the number 96, like I said, Brett Kingcott was involved. I think maybe Peter Akimano might have had some involvement in it. I heard Gavin Fitzgerald come onto the radio. I don't know if he was involved in it as well.
It was a battle around the 32nd position, I do believe. Lewis Woodall and Adam Waddle, both off of different laps. Well, kind of got the feeling we might see a late race yellow. And we certainly did. Oh, wow, there was a follow-up wreck there also. To your point, the 6 got hooked by somebody after the initial caution.
Looked like there was an end of the longest line penalty, at least one handed out so far, and that was given to Rick Grosser of the 34. He'll have to go to the end of the longest line, but this is going to set up a phenomenal finish here. Just over 10 laps to go when we get the green flag back going here in the FRN 200. And I feel like it makes it more interesting that there's that many laps left. I was expecting a caution to maybe come out in those last couple laps, if at all. And there you see it right there. Ooh, look like, yeah, that was Grosser getting into the back of it. Looked to be Kingcott in the number 6. And that's where he got his end of the longest line penalty from. But I think this makes it more interesting now that we're going to have around 10 laps when we get the green flag instead of 2 or 3. Because a lot of these drivers that are around 20th place that are still in this race without too much damage, they can get up there. They have enough time to maybe get up there to the front and compete.
Certainly have enough time to get up there and improve their finishing position. This caution very timely for Tyler McLennan. You see him going to be going around the iRacing pace truck. He's going to get his lap back. There will be 23 drivers on the lead lap when we go back green. That may not be the last lucky dog given out here tonight as well, as no waiver rounds for drivers here, as obviously the race leader Christopher Heller electing not to come down pit lane, so that takes the waiver round opportunity completely out of the equation. But we've been talking about kind of the race within the race, the leaders versus the leaders, and then the lap down cars versus the rest of their competition. That battle's not going to go away because we've got about 7, 8, 9 drivers that are 1 lap down. When we go back green, there's still every possibility that another caution flag could come out and another 1 or 2 drivers could get their laps back. So not only are we going to be watching the battle potentially for the checkered flag here down the closing stages, but drivers who may still have a second chance at improving their finishing position and on the lead lap as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of drivers that are still on the lead lap that have been fairly quiet throughout most of the day and don't really have any damage. You have Matt Durr, who has I think, very little damage. You have Kevin Watler, who's back there. We haven't really talked about him. Barba Gelada, he got up into the wall earlier, I think, and he's been quiet ever since. He's up there in 18th. You have Eric Kep, who's still in this thing, in 19th. Cody Giles lost the draft of his dark horse teammates after that last pit stop. He gets himself back into this race, and we know how well he can push and how fast he is. And all of those dark horse cars are actually all together right now. All 5 of them are all right there together in around 10th place right now. So that's going to be something definitely to watch for, is those dark horse cars. I mentioned earlier how strong they were in the All-Star event last week.
Certainly tough to make it this far into this 80-lap race and end the race in the garage area, but that is the case. About 7 laps ago, RJ Williams went to the garage. He's going to finish 38th here tonight, and Breyer Fritz, who's had his struggles here tonight in the 31, about 8 laps ago, he also made the hard left-hand turn to the garage. He will finish in the 39th position, but Heller chooses the outside line here. The race leader has the opportunity to choose which lane he wants for the restart. He will give the inside line to Hunter Madalinas. Elliot Henderson will be on the inside of row number 2. Zachary Henry on the top. Then Austin Moore and Matt Daniels, they make up row 3. Nathan Nicholson, Shane Nicewong in row 4. Hunter Brittle and Mike Tellier. That's going to complete the top 10 as we prepare for an 11-lap shootout here tonight at Daytona. And I'd have to say, if I'm Christopher Heller, not surprised he took the top, because we've seen him and Zach Henry work together, and of course we've also seen that on restarts, that outside line seems to get the early momentum.
Yeah, very good decision, I think, here from Christopher Heller. Zachary Henry being his teammate over at 2511 Racing. Zachary Henry worked a lot with 2511 Racing last year, but wasn't technically part of the team. Now he's officially part of 2511. You also have Matt Daniels is the third guy on the high side. So you have 3 2511 drivers lined up on that high side. And then underneath them, you have Madalinas and Henderson, who work so well together, and Austin Moore as well, who works well with them as well. As the green flag waves once again, possibly for the last time. Will we get another caution here? Madalinas and Heller close to the line. Madalinas has a very slight advantage, getting that great push from Henderson. Elliot Henderson, a.k.a. Mr. Bobby Carter, giving him a hard push going into 1 and 2. Madalinas will clear Heller, and it looks like he might stick with Henderson for now.
You're that second truck in line. Your goal is to shove the truck in front of you to try and push them out to the race lead, because if you're helping them, you're helping yourself. Looks like Heller, with the aid from Henry, they're going to pull back alongside of Madalinas and Henderson heading into turn 3. They're scattering behind them from 10th place on back.
This is where you need to make your move. We're coming to 10 laps to go this time by. You need to set yourself up for the finish at this point. And those drivers 10th on back are all jumbled up, falling a little farther back from the pack. And you see these front 10 or 12 guys all lined up, battling it out hard like we've seen throughout most of the day. Heller leading the high side with a great push from his teammate Zachary Henry.
Fuel is no longer a concern for these drivers. You've got what you've got from now to the checkered flag. You either bring home the trophy, or maybe in some cases bring home the steering wheel. 9.5 down the back straightaway. Henry a little loose there. He might have been stepping out of line just a bit there on Heller, but tucks back in line here now. Seen a couple of drivers test the waters there with their right sides just up above the white hash marks.
Saw the number 12 of Henry peek to the high side a little bit. Don't know if he's maybe trying to get some air to that nose, or maybe seeing if he can maybe split his teammate here. The number 11 of Christopher Heller. Heller leading the field. The number 12 right in behind him. Madalinas on that inside. Henderson's giving him a good push, but Austin Moore isn't quite close enough to his bumper to give that extra help.
Looking just like it did when the green flag flew to start this evening's festivities. Double wide all the way back through the top 20. Got a couple of stragglers in between the top 20 and then a second pack who might just at this point in time be some onlookers waiting to see what happens in this lead group, maybe sensing we might be in for another caution.
Yeah, I'm watching drivers like Eric Kemp back there, who's completely backed it off, expecting maybe a big wreck before we get done with this thing. And the way these drivers are racing here at the front, I would not be at all surprised. I'm just waiting for someone to maybe make it 3 wide and put themselves in the middle as Heller and Madalenas continue to go back and forth as they've done most of the day.
Back in the 8th position is where you find the 49 of Shane Neiswanger. 1 year ago at Daytona, he was the highest finisher of the drivers taking part in tonight's festivities. Started 21st, finished in the 3rd position. We'll see if he can get back up here into the top 5 in back-to-back seasons, but nowhere really to go for anybody from the 2nd row on back as they're all boxed in. Whoa, way wide and handsome off of turn 4. Went the 12 of Zach Henry. Oh, we got a hook. Someone got hooked back there. Nathan Nixon in the middle of the pack, just at the start-finish line. Big wreck, several trucks involved.
Look, you have Jake Miller involved. Looks like Matthew Durr is around. Justin Mons, your pole sitter, is around. Looks like he didn't get a lot of damage, but he did spin it out. Looks like the number 68 of Zach Fertig is spun around as well in that Miller High Life machine. A lot of wrecked race cars right here, Seth.
Boy, barely just saw that in the latter portion of the screen. Might have been a bit of a checkup there. Mike Tellier was in front of Nathan Nixon, and then someone tried to force it up the middle 3 wide, I do believe, and I'm not sure Nixon knew that there was a truck low, and that's what led to the contact. And I said this earlier, if there's one place you really don't want to have a wreck take place to try and avoid, it's through the tri-oval, because you've got the grass, which doesn't have a lot of grip. You've got a very congested and narrow area on the front straightaway, and a lot of drivers paid the price for that, and now will be finishing this race with torn-up trucks.
But because of that caution, 25-11 will have another driver on the lead lap as Jordan Gonzalez will get his lap back as the lucky dog. And there you see the madness just ensue right in behind these drivers. Just a massive accident right here. Just craziness, and cautions breed cautions, Seth. I think we could possibly see another wreck or two before we're even done with this thing.
I believe that with the number of laps we have when the timing of that caution took place, we should at least get one more restart under regulation. We shouldn't have to go into overtime. But it will be interesting to see if this indeed is the last caution that we've seen here tonight. I mean, if you remember back to the finishes of the heat races, it seemed like drivers really forcing the issue. The trucks were really moving around. That was really what it looked like there in those final 10 laps of that run here before we had the yellow flag eventually come out.
Here is the onboard view right here. It looks like Zach Fertig and the number 68. Sees a lot of smoke, and it looks, I don't know if you got a little help right there at the very end. Not a lot of damage from this incident per se for the 68. That was his look right there. Yeah, I think we're going to get green flag racing maybe with 3 or 4 laps to go. Lights didn't go out right there, so I'm thinking more like 3 laps to go. Here's Jake Miller. He gets pretty heavy contact involved in this one, and his day is pretty much done in the number 4. He's just going to try to get as many points as he can at this point.
Jake Miller, last year's runner-up for the championship. Several drivers down pit lane getting repairs done. Another driver that was involved in that was Tyler McLennan, who had gotten the free pass after the last yellow flag, and that hit enough to take him out of this race. So a tough break there for a driver who was up inside the top 10 the early stage of this race. The green flag pit stops didn't work out to his benefit. He kept himself up in the lead pack, though, got the free pass, and unfortunately his night at Daytona going to come up just a little bit short of the conclusion. You mentioned about the fact that Jordan Gonzalez is going to get back on the lead lap. Now, one thing we have to bear in mind with the drivers that get the free pass, they start the very tail end of the field. They don't get to line up behind the last car on the lead lap. They have to line up behind the lap down machines as well. So there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to get up there and make passes for position before the race is over. And I think in the case there of McLennan, just so far back behind a bunch of traffic, just didn't have anywhere to go when that wreck took place in front of him.
If I'm Jordan Gonzalez, I actually kind of maybe look at that as a good thing, because he is in 17th place. I feel like he's a little too far back to really compete for a victory, but we know we know how the end of these super speedway races get. Coming out of 3 and 4, we usually have a huge accident. And if we have that huge accident, Gonzalez is behind that accident, and most likely he will have enough time to maybe slow down and or avoid the incident, and maybe able to come out of here with the top 5 or a top 10, depending on the circumstances that happen here.
Now, we saw earlier on the previous restart, Christopher Heller up on the top side with Zach Henry. We weren't surprised about that strategy. Madalinas, though, who was the control car for this upcoming restart, elects to stay on the bottom with Elliott Henderson. Interesting call here. I mean, you could break up the teammates there on the top side if you chose the outside line.
Personally, I think this is the best move for Madalinas, just because it would be good to split up those 25-11 guys. But Henderson, other than maybe Cody Giles, Henderson's been one of the best pushers all day. Henry has his speed, but he's not as good of a pusher as Henderson is from what I've seen.
We're going to be getting the restart with 3 laps in regulation left to go. Should we get a caution between now and the throwing of the white flag, we would go into overtime. If we do receive the white flag, we then race back to the checkers. Madalina's going to be the leader. Christopher Heller in second, Elliott Henderson third, Zach Henry fourth, Austin Moore up to fifth, Matt Daniels in sixth, Nathan Nicholson, Shane Neiswanger, Hunter Brittle, and Mike Tellier. That's going to be the top 10 as we prepare for potentially the final restart of the night, but these drivers might have other ideas as the checkered flag is a little less than 8 miles away for these drivers.
Here comes the pace truck down pit road, and Madalinas will lead him to the green flag on the inside. 3 laps to go in the FRN 200. Do we get another caution? Are these drivers able to keep it clean for the last couple of laps? A great restart for Madalinas, and he gets a phenomenal push from Elliott Henderson. And the high side is splitting up a little bit, almost contact between Brittle and Nicholson, it looked like right there. A huge event right there. It's really going to split up the inside and the high side. You might see some craziness at the end of this backstretch as they're going to have a huge run. Nicholson and the number 16 of Fosnow.
Austin Moore, third truck on that inside line. Here's Fosnow now to his back bumper. Outside line, though, 2-truck tandem with Heller and Henry continue to keep themselves to the right rear quarter panel of race leader Hunter Madalinas. Off turn 4, trying to get the run and get alongside. We're coming to 5 miles left to race here in the FRN 200 at Daytona.
2 laps to go. Do they make it to the white flag? Does this race become official, or will we have a couple of green-white checkers? Madalinas leads the field on the inside with the push from Bobby Carter. On the outside, you have Christopher Heller getting the push from Henry. Does Austin Moore or Nathan Nicholson possibly make a move? Nicholson isn't part of 2511 anymore. He's been left that team. What does he do in that number 18 machine? Does he maybe make it 3 wide?
No moves being made down the back straightaway. Everybody seemed pretty content to ride with where they were at. Might be planning to just get to the white flag and let the chips fall where they may. Now we got a third line forming. That's Nicholson up on the top. He's been able to pick up Hunter Brittle. We will get to the white flag and race the checkers. Look at the run by the 0. 3 wide for the race lead potentially when we get into turn 1.
I've mentioned it many times during this broadcast. The Dark Horse cars, they're working together, but right when I say that, Heller gets him into the wall and there's a huge accident. In turns 1 and 2, they will race to the checkered flag. It is the final lap.
They're continuing to wreck all the way from the entrance of turn 1 to the exit of turn 2. Henderson now jumps to the top side on Madalinas. He's going to pick up Henry. It's Austin Moore to try and help Madalinas. 2 trucks against 2 trucks, and then there's another 2-truck tandem of Fosnow and Matt Daniels. Now Daniels going to spin it. It's now down to 5.
And here they come off turns 3 and 4. Who will get the opening race of the Great Lakes season? Elliott Henderson getting the push from Henry. It's going to be close to the line, but it's going to be Henderson. Elliott Henderson, he is your FRN 200 champion of 2022. Elliott Henderson, Mr. Bobby Carter, gets the job done. Possibly the all-time greatest driver in Great Lakes Truck Series history gets the job done here tonight.
And that is going to mark Elliott Henderson's 20th win in the Truck Series. What a way to get it.
Phenomenal finish. Henry giving Henderson the push across the line. A great job from Henderson, able to get the job done here. Wow, what a finish and what a race here today to open the season. And now you're going to see Mr. Bobby Carter burn it down in that Elliott Henderson graphics machine, that bright green 37 that we tend to see quite a bit, celebrating and burn it down here in Great Lakes competition. He's going to do it once again here in the Daytona grass. Congratulations to him. What a race, Seth.
Think of how Elliott Henderson's night started. He qualified for what would have been third place on the starting grid, but he was the pole sitter for the first heat, got involved in an incident, and started this 500 outside of the top 20. We really didn't even mention his name when we took the green flag here tonight for the FRN 200 until, after the second round of green flag pit stops. He slowly, methodically worked his way up into a position to be in the hunt for this victory and made the move when it mattered the most.
A phenomenal job from Elliott Henderson, able to get the job done in the FRN 200. A very close finish down to the line, especially for second spot. Zachary Henry was able to snag second place away from Hunter Madalinas by 0.02 of a second. A very close finish for that second spot. Wow, going to go through maybe some results here before we maybe get into some interviews. Going to go through our finishing order here for today's event to start the season. Of course, your winner here tonight, you have Elliott Henderson in the number 37 machine. Mr. Bobby Carter able to get the job done. Zachary Henry coming home in the second spot. You have Hunter Madalinas up there. Austin Moore. You have Rod Fasnow, able to get a top 5. Great performance from that number 16 KFC machine. Matt Daniels comes home 6. Brett Kingcott, a phenomenal comeback from him, able to get a top 10. William Barbagelata in the top 10 and 8th. You have Nathan Nicholson, Christopher Heller up there in the top 10. Then on to the next group of people in the 11th spot. You have Jordan Gonzalez in 11th. You have Mike Tellier, who ran in the front most of the day, ended up coming home 12th. Cody Giles, Zach Fertig, Eric Kep, Shane Neiswanger, Hunter Brittle, Truesdale, Watler, and Mons. And let's go on to some notables just to finish off our order here. You have Ross Brockman in 21st. Matthew Rodriguez ended up coming home 22nd. Aaron Duclos, 26th. Lewis Woodall back there in 27th. You have Jake Miller, who ended up coming home 32nd here today. Gavin Fitzgerald in 35th. And then rounding out your field here tonight, you had Daniel Nanny in the number 30 machine coming home in the 42nd position. Wow, well, what a race, Seth. I think we're going to try to get some interviews here in a moment. But any last thoughts on this phenomenal race here?
Just your typical Daytona race for sure. We end up seeing several different stages when it comes to a super speedway race, whether it's Daytona or Talladega. Early stages, they've got the pre-race jitters. They all test the waters, double wide, 3 wide to see what they can do. Then you start to get into maybe a first caution coming out and the cooler heads prevailing. They figure, all right, let's not tear up any equipment. Let's try and make sure that we can at least get to a round of green flag pit stops. We saw that. The field getting spread out. We were wondering if we were going to possibly see the field bunch back up again with a yellow flag. It did. Then we entered into what we kind of consider chaos mode at the super speedways. You get closer to the end of this race, there's a lot more take than there is give. You get those late race yellows, and as always at super speedways, you get those fantastic finishes. It kind of took a bit of a race of attrition there in the closing stages, which is why we saw drivers like Brent Kringcott, who was involved in an earlier incident, our lucky dog under the last caution, Jordan Gonzalez, get finishes up and just outside of the top 10, but I'll tell you what, you couldn't ask for a better season opener. Now these drivers have the building blocks of what they're going to be able to do for the remainder of this season with the season opener in the books.
Now we're going to try to get some interviews for you. I think I'm going to try to get our third place finisher, Hunter Madalinas, the closer. Kyle, up in the booth, you got me?
Yeah, I got you, Kyle.
Hunter, great race out there, man. I figure you were out there leading pretty much most of the race. I think you ended up leading the most laps here tonight. A phenomenal performance. What was maybe going through your mind in those last couple of laps when you're just battling it out with Heller and Henderson and Henry and all those guys?
Oh yeah, a lot of those guys. I mean, those guys are fantastic drivers. We got towards the end there, and when that caution came out, I knew things were going to get a lot more crazier and hectic after being single file for that whole long time. And then it was getting towards the end, and we had that last wreck to set us all up. And I knew I liked Chris pushing because he was a very aggressive pusher, but I really liked Elliott pushing. He's a very smooth pusher and really good at it, so I knew I had to choose him. And yeah, we were just on that last restart. We're getting a run, and I don't know what happened. All I saw was they were wrecking behind me, and Elliot just was able to get up, and I couldn't really do anything at that point. But hope for someone to come up behind me and push me. But I would say all in all, it was a good race. I normally don't really do good at restrictor plate, so I was actually pretty surprised at this finish.
Yeah, you were up front pretty much the whole entire race, up there either in the lead or battling it out for the lead. What was maybe going through your mind when we were getting those long green flag runs, and you were pretty much leading the whole field throughout most of that time?
I was enjoying it. I mean, leading super speedways is kind of fun because you kind of lead an entire line, but it was throwing a lot of strategy out the window. It was making me work with people that normally I don't work with because my team was kind of playing it safe, playing it towards the back, and I was trying to be aggressive, like I normally don't do on restrictor plates. But yeah, I was trying to do what I could to stay up there, and it was really working with other teams that would work with me. And I met Chris and that entire 2511 happily took me, and I was happy to work with them.
That 2511 brigade was definitely up there competing, up there late. Gotta talk about the upcoming season we got at hand, though, Hunter. Last season, you were able to snag 6 victories. You had a dominant regular season. Do we expect you to come out here and kind of do the same thing this year?
I would like to. I would like to go back to beat my record in the next season after. I know Elliot's taken one off the list for me, but hey, there's always another race and more chances to win.
Well, before we let you go, Hunter, anybody you have to thank for your performance out there tonight?
Thank you for y'all. I mean, you guys put on great broadcasts. Thanks for everyone that helped me work with them. I mean, giving me the chance because I don't think I could have done it by myself. Elliot Henderson, he's a great guy, great pusher. When you need him most at the end, he's there. But and just my family for just doing what they do.
Well, we appreciate you, Hunter. Congrats on that 3rd place, and we hope to see you next week at Las Vegas.
Yep, hope to see you then.
All right, good talking to you, Hunter. Okay, now I think we're going to try to bring in our 2nd place finisher, Zachary Henry. Zachary Henry, Kyle up in the booth, you got me?
Yes, sir.
Zach, great race, man. I was just talking to Hunter how he was up front pretty much the whole race, and you're kind of in that same boat with him. You're up front pretty much the whole entire race. The same thing with your heat. That's probably the first question I have to ask for you. How did it feel to just be up there on those long green flag runs up there in the front of the line?
I mean, it's always nice when we get green flag stops at the super speedways because it spreads the field out. And the 2511 guys, we all had a plan to just kind of stick together. And I mean, we all ran really well in the heats and all started up front, and that just kind of became the strategy from there. And I think we would have preferred that it go green the rest of the way, but I'm sure that caution with about 10 to go made it a whole lot more interesting.
Yeah, that was one of the storylines I was making throughout the day. Was you raced a lot with 2511 last season, but now you're full blown out part of the team, and you guys seem to just work really well together. You and Christopher Heller, Jordan Gonzalez, Matt Daniels, all you seem to work together very well. How does it feel to really be part of a powerhouse team like 2511?
Pretty good. One of the things I've struggled with since joining the league is not having like practice with groups and struggling to figure out how the car will handle in a pack. So I'd always spend the first half of the race or something along those lines trying to figure out how to race, how much tire to actually save, and be competitive. So I'd usually fall behind early on and then just come in as the race and then pick up pace as the race goes on. So now that I'm running with these guys, it's gonna be nice to get some practice time, especially since there's some really good drivers on the team, and go into the race with already knowing where I should be running rather than figuring out what I should be doing compared to the rest of the field.
It's always good to run with friends and teammates and try to figure out what's the best way to run and really just try to give each other notes. That's always the best way to really go about it. But got to do a little bit of a preview for the season, Zach. I remember watching you last season. You started off the season as maybe a top 10, top 15 guy in your first couple of races, but then in the second half of 2021, you were able to snag a couple of victories. Do we kind of expect the same thing in 2022? Some more improvement from you?
Well, I'm expecting it. I definitely expect to run more consistently in the top 5, and I will for sure be disappointed if I don't have at least a couple wins between both trucks and Premier because I'm running full time in both. But let's see, Premier will be a little different because I got some life events coming up, so I'm guaranteed to miss at least one of those races. But the truck championship, at the moment, At the moment, it's looking like I'll be able to run everything, and I fully expect to be running for the championship at the end of the season.
Well, that's always great to hear, Zach. Like I mentioned, you did a lot of good racing at the end of last year, and we expect you to kind of do the same thing this year, especially with 2511 working with those guys. I only see more improvement out of you. And before we let you go, anybody you have to thank for your great performance out there tonight with that runner-up finish?
I got to start out thanking 2511 and all the guys on the team, Matt and Jordan and Chris. Those 3 ran today, and we worked really well together. Just kind of lined up, and definitely, nobody was selfish. We were all working to benefit the team, and just kind of put in a really good strategy. And then Brandon as well, despite the fact that he wasn't able to run, did some practice stuff with him, just kind of learn how to draft, how these cars are going to handle. Let's see, broadcast team for putting on the show. I'm excited to go back and watch it, especially the last 10 laps. And then let's see, Undercurrents updated their logo, so I updated my paint scheme, and they've been doing some live shows around the Dallas area. So go look at those guys up. And then my wife, as always, for just being awesome.
Well, we appreciate you talking to us, Zach, and we hope to talk to you again next week after Las Vegas.
I hope to talk to y'all on Friday after Daytona.
Oh, that's the spirit right there. That's even better. That's the spirit right there. Well, great talking to you, Zach, and congratulations. Enjoy the rest of your night, man.
Thank you. You too.
Of course. Now I think we're going to do our last interview of the night. We're going to bring in Mr. Bobby Carter, Elliot Henderson, your winner of the FRN 200. Elliot, call up in the booth. You got me?
I got you.
Elliot, phenomenal race, man. You ended up wrecking out in the heat race and had to kind of start closer to the back than you probably wanted to, but you got up there to the front. And how did that feel, really, just to come through the field and snag that victory there tonight?
I feel like if that's not how my night goes from start to finish, that it's not the right way to end the night. I don't know. I felt really good about a 4th place starting spot, and then that got completely torn away from me 5 laps into the 8-lap race. And I guess, man, I did not anticipate being in that position. I was content just pushing Hunter to the end there, and I guess it was just a bad bump on the outside lane that gave any opportunity for that finish. So, yeah, coming up through the field was not what I wanted to do. So we sat back in about 15th and then cycled in with that lead group and just kind of chilled and ended up right where we needed to be somehow right at the end.
You're just one of those drivers that just seems to find themselves in the right place at the right time at the end of these races, but it's usually not by mistake. Some great racing there late. How did it feel to work with some of your teammates and drivers up there in the front in that late going?
I mean, at this point, I think Austin owns about as many of the wins that I have that I own. He has been a crucial factor in half of these wins at this point. Tonight was no different. I mean, I was hoping he could be the one that pushes me, but Zach gave me an incredible shot at the end there. Nearly turned me off 4, but we made it work out. But, Austin's always been there to help out and try to get these wins as well. So, we had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun racing around my teammates for about 15th. I had no intention of having a shot at this. I don't know how we ended up here. I don't know how we ended up in victory lane, and I'm completely just flabbergasted. We led all of a quarter of a lap, I think, So yeah, like I said, I was totally down to push Hunter all the way through there. But as soon as the whole field clears out, like I'm not just gonna sit there and push him. Like I'm not gonna give Zach or Austin a chance there when I can take it myself. So ton of fun working with all these guys and a lot of close racing at the end. But yeah, to get it done, man. I mean, first super speedway win. Definitely just blown away right now.
It's definitely very fitting to see Great Lakes' most successful driver get the job done in the crown jewel event, the FRN 200. I know this is going to be a part-time schedule for you on the truck side of things. When would we maybe expect to see you next racing out here with these guys in the truck series?
I think I'll be back next week. I can double check the old schedule here, but yeah, because they finally put Vegas back on the schedule, and I got to have a great duel with Jake back in season 1 or season 2, whenever that was. So definitely come back next week, and then I'll be up in the booth for the next 3 races, and then we'll be back for Nashville. So definitely not done yet. We've got 5 races I think we can run. So we'll be back for a bunch of them, but a lot of the newer ones, like I want to go to Milwaukee, and I want to go back to Kansas since we had a good run there last time. So just picking the ones that honestly I think we can win at, and then this was kind of a throwaway. Because this was between Daytona, Talladega, or Darlington, and after Heller kind of put me in my place at Darlington there, I've decided let's pick a super speedway and see what we can do. And again, no intent on winning tonight, but to start this one off and start the season off this way. Looking forward to coming back next week and trying to follow it up with a 1-2 and keep these guys guessing on who they're really racing against this season.
Now, I know, Elliot, that your focus is probably going to immediately shift over to the Premier Series because I know that you and Bransky are going to be going back and forth once again this season for the revamped Premier Series. It should be a lot of fun on Friday. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think we've got an awesome package there too at Daytona with these Xfinity cars. Again, I don't expect much out of it. I usually expect to get wrecked in these races and just kind of go out and run where I can run. But at the end of the day, if we're in a position to get it done, hopefully we're around some teammates and we can put a good run at it. But that package over there is a ton of fun, just like this one is, where you can really slam draft people and sometimes get away with it, sometimes not. But a lot of just massive runs and a lot of like potential 2 and 3 wide racing if you got the right group of guys. So what we saw in the All-Star race, I hope is what we see in the Premier Series, and we ran really well in the All-Star as well. We won stage 2 out of that. So I'm pretty confident going into that. If we can start it off the right way and put ourselves in a good position points wise for that season, I'll be really happy looking towards the playoffs. I really wish that I had one of these races this way when I ran full time in trucks. I mean, to win at Daytona is awesome in its own right, but to set you up that way points wise for the whole rest of the season is a great way to get the season started. So shout out to a lot of guys that started their season off the right way here, like Rod and Brent and a lot of those guys that were either part-time last year or didn't run up front every week. They get to start their season off the right way tonight. So we'll see how the rest of this goes, but definitely looking forward to getting Premiere started and seeing where that goes.
We appreciate you talking to us, Elliot. Anybody you have to thank out there for your performance in the season opener, able to snag that crown jewel here tonight?
Well, first off, I got to say, we changed the name of the team literally today. I mean, we've talked about it for a while, but it's E95 Esports, kind of a conglomerate effort between myself and Michael Levine, because we're going to run Road to Pro starting this week as well, and try to make a serious run at that. So, first race out, and a big win, a 4th place finish as well to boot with Austin there in 4th. So, honestly, just really cool way to end this night and finish it off. So we're 1 for 1 with E95, and now I expect my guys, Jake and Austin and these guys to step up and go win more races this season, maybe give us a championship at the end of it. But shout out to everyone that shows up that's a part of this team that makes this fun to come do. We don't build setups, but it's fun to hang out with guys, talk in the chat, and deal with competitors all the time. So shout out to we added Matthew Durr to the team this season. Obviously won I believe one of the Winter Series races at Daytona. So really good plate racer. Didn't have obviously great luck tonight, but excited to see what he does this season. All the guys that came back: Jake Miller, Peter Akimano, Austin Moore, Tyler McClellan, Briar Fritz. That's a dev driver that's not technically associated with the team, but he's under our wing, and I look forward to what he's going to be able to do this season. Again, not a good night for him, not a good night for half of our team, but I feel like that's how this goes is, one of us has a really good night and the rest of us kind of struggle. So we'll have to work on that consistency team-wise, but I think overall we've got some really good guys coming out, and they'll hopefully contend for wins and ultimately a championship this season. And then shout out to Michael Levine and everybody that puts this show on. He moved over to a race director role, left our team this season, co-owns it, but is now race director and handing out penalties and stuff. So I'm sure he's enjoying that to begin with. It was a slow race tonight, but I'm sure it'll pick up. And shout out to Eric Kep, Sam Hoff, who put on this series, and to you guys that put on the broadcast. I'm excited to go back, and I mean, I think I'll really only watch the last 3 laps because that's the most exciting for me, but I'm sure the race was phenomenal from what I was seeing around 15th. Like, we were always running up front and running too wide. So I'm sure the racing was exciting enough, and I hope that continues week to week.
Well, we appreciate you talking to us, Elliot. And yeah, we have to here in the booth, we have to thank Michael Levine for being a race director for the race and also updating us here in the booth. We definitely appreciate it, and that we're definitely going to be keeping an eye out for the revamped E95 Esports, formerly known as Split Second Esports. And have a great night, Elliot. Congratulations on that FRN 200. Go out there and celebrate, man.
Yeah, thank you guys. Daytona, I mean, doesn't get any bigger than that.
It definitely does. It never gets bigger than that. All right, Seth.
I'll tell you something, Kyle. While the interviews were going on, came across a very interesting statistic, and you kind of wonder just how much of an impact tonight's Daytona race is going to have on the remainder of the season. 14 drivers who finished in the top 20 in the standings last year took part in tonight's Daytona race. Only one of them finished in the top 10 in tonight's finishing results. I mean, it's incredible when you look at all the big names that were up in the forefront of the screen week after week last season, how Daytona here tonight, it's the season opener, but it may be one of the biggest X factors on the schedule in terms of drivers trying to pick up the pieces of what happened here tonight. I mean, I think Elliott kind of said it perfectly, the fact that half the team did well, but the other half did not do nearly as well as they were hoping. I think that kind of spells the same thing for a lot of the teams tonight.
That's exactly what it seems like, Seth. And as the race results run across your screen, I was mentioning it at the beginning part of the broadcast. You asked me the question, what should these drivers do? Should they really go all out or take it a little easier? And some of these drivers took it easier and were able to get decent finishes with some clean race cars. And you mentioned it, Seth, a lot of those drivers that finished up near the front in points ended up with wrecked race cars here tonight. So they're going to be fighting an uphill battle. You see it on that last page. You have Jake Miller and Matt Durr outside the top 30. Both of those drivers were in the championship 4 last season at Atlanta, and they're already that far back on points. Gavin Fitzgerald as well. He's one of the favorites to possibly make the championship 4 as well. So there's some good drivers that are way back on points just after one race, and now we're going to head into a track like Vegas, and I think that's really going to open the door for a lot of these drivers. Going to take a quick look at the upcoming schedule for the 2022 A season for the Great Lakes Truck Series. We go to Vegas next week. Then we go to Gateway, Worldwide Technology Raceway. Then we head to Charlotte Motor Speedway, do some racing on the dirt at Bristol Dirt, Nashville Super Speedway. I know that will be fun. Head back to the Super Speedway at Talladega, Milwaukee. And then we finish off the regular season at Michigan. And then we have a very good playoffs. I really like this playoff schedule we have. The first round is very dynamic. You have Darlington, which is probably the most difficult track to race on the NASCAR circuit. You have Watkins Glen, which is the most classic road course. Everybody loves Watkins Glen. And then you got Richmond, a classic short track, but at the same time, you really need to save those tires there. Then you go head on to the next round. We have Kansas, Dover, and Martinsville. Always fun to race at all 3 of those racetracks. And then probably one of the best racetracks to finish off the season, but we're going to be seeing it on that new surface at Atlanta Motor Speedway on June 14th for the championship 4, the finale of the Great Lakes Truck Series. Any last thoughts on this, Seth? This was just a pretty fun race here tonight with a great ending.
Absolutely a great way to start off the season for Elliott Henderson, picking up the victory. A lot of drivers going to be able to build off their good runs. Some other drivers going to be looking to mount some comebacks, and you look at some of those tracks coming up, including Las Vegas next week. You've got some drivers' tracks that are going to be coming up, opportunities for drivers to be able to control their fate, maybe not quite as much so as you would at a super speedway, but going to be very interesting to see what happens down the the continuation of the beginning half of this schedule and setting ourselves up for the upcoming playoffs.
Before we head out, I'd like to once again congratulate Elliot Henderson, aka Mr. Bobby Carter, the driver of that number 37, able to get the job done. Great Lakes' most successful driver, able to get the job done once again here tonight at Daytona in the FRN 200. He is the champion of this race. We will see you on Friday for the revamped Great Lakes Premier Series. That should be a lot of fun. The same time, the same place right here on the Flatout Racing Network on Friday at 8 Eastern time. And then next week at the same time, same place, 8 Eastern on Tuesday, we head to Las Vegas Motor Speedway for race number 2 of the Great Lakes Truck Series season. I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in for tonight's event, and we hope to see you either Friday for the Premier Series or next Tuesday back here for trucks. Good night, everyone, and once again, congratulations to Elliot Henderson.